What makes you think you deserve it?
When you've been working since you were 13, promise mom by everything. Burn so often, fire talking, scars so dark they steal your dreams. Nightmares to the young and clean. Life will rain for some it seems. Pray for days when heaven stays, but you ain't put no work in for the crown. You ain't put no work in for the crown.
Alright, we're live. Testing here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
No, if you want. I mean, this is the show.
Oh, okay. Alright, guys. Welcome to episode number 10. My goodness. So we're on number 10 already. My God, how time flies. So, we have two guests here today, okay? We have Aisha, right? Aisha. I'm so sorry. Aisha. And Chris. We appreciate you guys really coming on in today. Thank you so much.
Man.
Absolutely. We definitely appreciate as many guests as possible. And as always, we always want to welcome our guests with open arms. It's a great pleasure to have you guys on any of the topics. As you probably know already, what we talk about on the show is we talk about just basically unplugging from societal lies, okay? Yep. The show's purpose is to pretty much, as cold of a hard truth as it possibly is for many people, and it's a hard truth and it's a little hard for people to swallow, it's a big pill for people to swallow, we can't help people unless we tell them what the cold hard truth is. We're not doing a service. In fact, it's a disservice if we're constantly sugarcoating everything, if we're making things sound pretty when it's really ugly. We cannot do that. Yeah. Us, as men in this society, our purpose is to grow and to influence and to make sure that we're building. We cannot do that if it's on the contrary. With that being said and such, I know even with our guests here, they've seen some of our episodes and such, and I hope that we can have some great discussions here, even some debates. I think it's time we have even a nice little debate here about things and that, and they've already seen some of our content, and I do want them to kind of disagree with us on some things. Let's see if we can find some things in which we can disagree on. Even if they don't disagree on certain things, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try to say, let's try to find something that they disagree with, and we can kind of go from there. But I kind of want to relieve the floor over to you guys. I kind of just want you guys to kind of introduce yourselves here a little bit. What's your occupation? What do you guys do? How long have you guys been together? Things like that. Give us a little bit of your background to kind of get you guys started off here.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I've known Christian since I was almost 9, 10.
Camera guy.
And then, camera guy. And then I don't know how we've met, Leo. It might have been through Christian. I'm not sure, but
Really?
Yeah.
Even back then?
Oh, even back then, yeah.
You went to Everglades High School though.
No, I did not.
I thought you did.
No, I did not.
No, okay, so because
I knew everybody from Everglades, though. I knew AJ, I knew Remy, I knew all them, but I never actually went to Everglades.
how'd you guys meet? Remy and AJ.
Neighborhood.
Oh, just the neighborhood. Okay, so neighborhoods. To be honest with you, I can't remember either how you and I first met. We met somewhere for sure, and it might have been amongst the group as well.
Yeah.
And such. But no, you're a great guy, man. You're a cool guy. You're very well grounded. You're a good tone and everything. You're just good company to be around. So it's definitely a great pleasure to have Chris and his girlfriend Aisha on the show. And definitely, let me hear a little bit about you. And ladies first. I should have done ladies first. I'm so sorry. Definitely, I should have done it with her first. But yes, tell us a little bit about you, like your background and things like that.
No worries. So I am Pakistani and Irish.
Wow, nice mix. I haven't heard of that before.
Yeah, it's kind of frowned upon in the Pakistani
Really?
religion. Like my dad's parents weren't crazy about people that weren't Pakistani getting married, but they for some reason accepted her, and so they kind of flourished from there. I have a sister. Other than that, I'm a litigation manager for a law firm here in South Florida. And I met this guy about 5 years ago.
This guy.
We actually met on a dating website or an app called OkCupid.
No, we have a study on that actually.
Yeah, I've heard some. But yeah, we've been together for 5 years and just going through life together. We moved in together about 2 years ago and just coming across the challenges as they come.
Interesting. How's the law firm going for you with litigation and things like that? How's that environment?
So I work at a law firm that has the younger-minded thinking. The two main partners are about my age, and they kind of redone completely how law firms operate. They care more about the employees and their well-being and the culture than actually the work that gets done. So I feel like I'm at the best law firm I can be in honestly the entire state. But it's going well though. We're growing like crazy. They started with 3 employees right before COVID, and they've succeeded. They have over 100 employees now, and just opened a new office, so like it's going well.
So do you have like a high position within the law firm, or it's?
Yeah, so I'm a litigation manager.
Oh, sorry. Yes, you did say manager. Yes, it's more of a managing side. Okay, perfect. No, that's good. That's very, very good. Okay. And Chris, I didn't ask you about your profession and such. Yeah.
So I'm a electrical engineer. I work for I'll not disclose the company because of security reasons.
Of course,
I work on submarines. I work on the electronics and the batteries and the whole system. And yeah, I've been enjoying it so far. I've been there for about a year. But yeah, it's been great so far. I'm actually looking for another opportunity right now. But yeah, I enjoy it. It's a great career, and yeah, I think we're both men of science.
Yeah, because it's great that you mentioned that, because when it comes to STEM jobs, that's where most of it, over 90%, is dominated by men. Now you are going to see, you're going to see some women, of course, taking it on, but the majority of it is going to be 90. Like we even have a science here, actually statistics. It's not science, it's statistics. How the social programs and the STEM programs are dominated individually, right? So the social working jobs are more dominated by females, whereas on the men's side, it's the STEM jobs in which they're mostly going to be taking. You were going to say something about that? Or?
Oh, no, I was just going to agree. Every job I've been to 3 different jobs of electrical engineering, and I've only maybe seen 5 to 2% of women. It's usually dominantly, middle-aged or higher white men.
I'd like to add most of the women aren't attractive.
On a side note, they're not that attractive, okay? Let me just throw that out there.
So at my current job...
You hear that, ladies? Those are exactly, you're not that attractive.
At my current job, we have, as far as I know, one lady who works in my team, and she dresses like Steve Jobs every day. It's always black top, black bottom. She's very, business-oriented. It's very the opposite of femininity. It's very masculine. But I feel like in my career, because you have so many males and so much masculinity, like they kind of do that to fit in.
Mm-hmm. And it's here's the thing about certain types of jobs, right? I guess we can start our first topic here when it comes to, job categorization. Mm-hmm. Now, because of affirmative action, because of diversity, right? Women now have more opportunities to have different types of jobs, and literally any type of job as long as they want to go for it.
Yeah.
Now, they can go for STEM jobs whenever they want to, and I'll even say that they have a higher chance of obtaining that job over the man, even if the degrees have differentiations. Like she can have an AA, the guy can have a BA, somewhere around there. She's still, by default, unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because it's like the guy's working, but because... I'd say it, but because she's a woman, she has that a little bit more priority to get that job because of affirmative action, because of diversity. So when you hear stigma, not really a stigma, but you hear the notion that, women dominate the job field, yes and no. I say yes because they have more opportunities and they can get more of the social working jobs and even STEM jobs if they choose to go into that. But as we just talked about, and by your affirmations, the STEM jobs are heavily dominated by men. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's totally nothing wrong with that. At the end of the day, it's choice. At the end of the day, right? Here's where some commotion comes in. Okay? And we're arguing, not us, but you'll hear this little stigma, and it's an axiom. I'm even going to say it's an axiom where you're going to hear people saying, there's a wage gap. Do you think there's a wage gap?
Absolutely. Especially in my profession, there's not as much favoritism to women, especially for being an attorney, but there is a wage gap, drastic wage gap between female attorneys and male attorneys, as well as in a lot of law firms, how people treat males versus women. I would say in the legal profession, I think men are treated better and heard more than women.
Here's my thing about the wage gap. It's been debunked billions of times, actually. Now, I'll be honest with you. I don't know too much of what goes on in the law firm, so I'm not going to be pretentious and then act like, I know this and that. In general, though, and because of the debunking, the wage gap has been debunked numerous times, simply because, as what we talked about, if we're talking about, Chrissy, let's pull up this little statistic, actually. It's from Discord. It's that page from, I posted it today, actually. We can kind of go off on this a little bit. And as you've probably seen on the show and such, we do a lot of just trying to pull up articles, statistics, and science, biology, history, because it gives us more context.
Yeah.
It's ineffective if we kind of just talk, and then we're spewing out numbers. We can get called out for that very easily, right? It's like, okay, so where are you getting that? I will show you where we're getting it from. So that way, it's authentic. If we don't say it, and we're just, it's not a good conversation from there on out, you know?
That's actually something I appreciated about like the previous episodes.
Oh, yeah.
You're not just telling us things. It's like, hey, here's the proof. This isn't just my opinion. These are where you formed your opinions from, or where you fact checked against your opinions from.
Right, and the thing is too that, I'll be honest with you, that there are going to be certain points where I'll tell you, you know, I don't have any statistical evidence on this, and kind of like how I told you, I'm not familiar with law firms and like how the environment is, so I'm not going to act like I know it. But I'm going to go off based off what's in general and what's been proven to be so-and-so. I have to go off with that. And at the end of the day, it's what I think truly doesn't matter. It really doesn't, because as long as there's something there saying, well, your opinion is this and that, it kind of doesn't matter because it's been proven. You know what I mean? But we can still have opinions, which is good, because I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys you can't have opinions. I'm not going to do that. That's not professional. It's not authentic. And it destroys the quality of the conversation. It really, really does. So I do welcome, the Unplugging welcomes opinions, stigmas, irrationalities even, you know, and then we have a general conversation. And as you see even with our guests, we don't really argue with the guests. Like, we'll tell them in a professional, respectful way, like, okay, that's an interesting point. However, I disagree because A, B, C, and D. And we kind of just go from there. Chris, were you able to...
Yeah, which one are you looking for?
It's the page. It's that one page on Discord. It's the most recent one.
Alright, give me a second.
Alright, so while he pulls it up, I do have to have our first quote-unquote disagreement.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, was this study?
It's not a study. It's from Myron.
Just a page.
Yeah, it's just a page. It's the most recent one.
Oh, okay. Well, give me 1 second.
alright. So, I've
There it
looked
is.
up... Okay,
Yeah.
I'll let you actually go.
I mean, this is the best I can do for now.
That's okay. Yeah. Yeah. So
Oh,
I did it. Yeah. So we can kind of see here. And this is coming from a book that has a bunch of statistics here. This actually comes from Myron Gaines's book. And basically, he's already done the research, and then I just, took a picture of it, and then here it is.
Yeah.
And we can see here most of the STEM jobs here. The top 10 jobs for men, you can see each of them are over 90%. Engineering, plumbing, industrial mechanics, things like that. So it's all STEMmy, right? And then we can see for the women, it's more social work, like teachers, nursing, things like that. And great, no worries. And then the 89% for the, hairdressers. Okay, cool. So it's the way we are, and kind of just going off this, is that when it comes to the top 10 jobs for men, it's more industrialization where it's building society, whereas for these jobs, at least that I mentioned, it's more social work. It's just more for the women's side. It's not really building to kind of run society in certain ways. That's pretty much what the statistics will run off, right?
It's more emotional.
Yeah, you could say that, a little bit more emotional and such. We can definitely talk a little bit about like the neuroticism and the emotions and things like that. We might be able to talk about that actually. We have like 10,000 things to talk about, right, within like a certain time limit.
Yeah.
So kind of going off that, we can see kind of how that is in the wage gap. This is what I was kind of mentioning. This book mentions that as well. Now, what determines how people are getting paid, okay? If we're considering the hours worked, time off, education, the work that's being done, how much contribution you're putting into the job, how much time, I think I said how much time you're putting into it. When we put all that in together, there really isn't a wage gap. In fact, I'll say there's no wage gap. That's just me coming off from that, because if you're doing the exact same thing, putting the exact same work and time, no matter what, there is no wage gap. So for me, I can say, like, let's say we're at a construction office, right? One person has a blue-collar job and then the desk job, right? And then we have a white-collar job who's outside in the hot heat and picking up heavy objects, and if something falls on him, he can die, right?
Yeah.
Because he's doing the white-collar job, this person, I mean, a woman can do it too. Man or woman does this job, they're inherently going to get paid more because they're doing the more laborious task. So because you're doing the more laborious task, you are going to be paid more for that, versus the jobs in which are not so laborious, you're not going to be paid that much. And plus the time you're spending on it. So there's a lot of factors to kind of kick in, and when it's all equal, all the same, the wage gap pretty much disperses from that point on. You said you had something. Well, ladies first, please. You had something you maybe wanted to say. You want to add to that, or?
I kind of disagree with that. I think that it depends on the profession. I think
Always.
in your
It's always gonna
example for
depend on that.
construction, like that could be fair, or at a grocery store that could be fair. But based on profession, I feel like especially for professions that are previously dominated by men, like it's sometimes I think that's where you see more of the wage gap.
But the thing is, it's not a wage gap because they're doing laborious jobs. That's the thing. If they were doing the blue collar jobs, the pay is equal. You see what I mean? So if you're doing, let's say, a desk job and then the man's doing the desk job and everything is equal, there is no wage gap. But if you're doing the desk job and someone else is doing the laborious job, they're going to get paid. That's not a wage gap. It's because he's performing more. So he deserves more. He's getting paid more because he's doing more. That's basically what it is. If it's equal, then the wage gap disperses from that point on.
But like in my profession, I've personally seen like where female attorneys and male attorneys have been paid differently, but they went to a similar law school. They have similar experience in like time as well as quality. They have a similar caseload, and there's still a wage gap. So how?
So here's I guess my question now, because this is where I'm kind of learning from your end, right? So if we're going to say there's a wage gap there, so what determines, I guess, if we're comparing like the male and female, right? If we're comparing the male and female when it comes to this type of profession, why do you think the man gets paid more from if they both have the same exact thing, and you're saying they both have similar cases or the same volume? Do they have the same volume of cases? Do they spend equal time? Do they spend the same time in the office? Do they take less time off the office? Because I know there's like maternity leave and things like that. Those are things to consider. If we're not considering those, then there's going to be that discrepancy. It's like, okay, why is there a wage gap? Because we're adding all these other things, right? So we have to consider that. We have to. If we're not considering time off and maternity leave, the person spends more time with this man or woman in the office, they're performing more cases, they're closing more cases, they're being successful with more of the cases, they're going out looking for more cases, or they're doing other things possibly, right? That person's going to get paid more because they're putting in more time and effort and work into it, and if they're closing out more cases, they're winning more cases, then they're going to get paid more because they deserve it.
I still disagree.
Okay, that's okay.
Just because I've seen it, like especially like a previous law firm that I worked with, I've seen to where they're pretty similar, and in some instances, like I've seen a woman work harder to get more of what she deserves, whereas a man works less and doesn't care as much and takes off more time or checks out earlier. So like even like the attitudes, and she still gets paid less than like a man.
That's interesting you brought that up. So I don't want to get sidetracked. I just thought like 10 different things here, to be honest with you. That might complement what you're saying. So, Chris, I don't know if you may have seen this episode. Chris, we might not remember this one. Oh, which episode was it? But anyway, we talked a little bit. Oh, it was I think with Julie. Right, so it was with Julie.
Can't hear that one.
So you might not have seen it because we took it down, unfortunately. But so we had a discussion actually, and then I thank you for kind of making me recollect on this. We talked about personality traits, right? So I think I might be able to answer your question, or maybe this disagreement, possibly, who knows, we'll see. So one of our past guests, before you guys actually, we talked a little bit about personality traits. So we talked about the 5 big traits. I can't remember, but one of them is conscientiousness. Okay, the person's on time. He or she knows how to be very formal and appropriate and respectful and kind of just professional, right? Yeah. That's one of them. Another one is neuroticism, which it's been proven that women go through this more. They experience more negative emotion, right? Another one is being sociable. That's number 3. The other 2 I can't seem to remember. One of these days I'll remember all that, but there's 5, but the 3 are there. But the main one I want to talk about, 4, agreeableness. I don't know if I mentioned that, but agreeableness. Now, here's where, I hate to say it, here's where a little bit of stereotypes come in. This is unfortunate. I hate it, to be honest with you. Now, here's where one of the big 5 comes in, okay? And it doesn't work, unfortunately, in the woman's favor. I would like for it to, but it doesn't. It just happens most of the time. Now, when a man presents himself, like let's say, like, even if we're doing like real estate, right? Like if we're making deals, big hard deals, if it's 2 men, right, and they're presenting you, let's say Chris comes up to me, let's say we're doing business together, right? And I present to you some sort of deal with it for your engineering company. It's like, oh, hey, well, I think we should add this, and everyone's going to get a raise or something like that. Something kind of crazy. Let's just hypothetically say. But then let's say you give me some pushback, okay? Because you're a man, this is where the stereotype kicks in. Because he's a man, the moment he shows disagreeableness, and the moment he shows me affirmative, firmness, and he's very stern with his decision, I'm going to look at him as the man, two men, as like, wow, he's a serious negotiator. And that's unfortunate. But it's not unfortunate because of us, but because I'm going to look at you like, okay, so you drive a hard bargain. You know what? Let's make a deal here. Okay, so you disagree with this. Okay, so what can you and I do to kind of make this a good deal? Because I know you want to win, I want to win. So I think we're stoic men. I think we can make a deal here without kind of losing ourselves here.
Yeah.
Let's problem solve. Let's make a floor plan of what we're going to do, and then we get it done from there. Flipping the coin now on the dichotomy, here's where it becomes very different. Let's say you go up to your boss, right? You go up to your boss and then you ask for a raise. Now, and if it's a male boss mostly, even if it's a female boss for the most part, if you go up to them and say, well, hey, look, I want a raise, and then they say, well, I'm not going to give you a raise because of A, B, C, and D, and you try to disagree with them, the stereotype kicks in and they're going to call you names. They're probably going to say, oh, that's so disrespectful, that's not ladylike of you. They're going to shame you for that for the most part, right? But if he did that, if he decided to hard deal, and they're going to give him kind of the time and date to review his performance a little bit, like, you know what? All right, you drive a hard bargain. Okay, we can give you a little bit of a raise here and such, but only if they see some potential already. Is that going to happen with women all the time? I don't think so. It's a stereotype. It's an unfortunate stereotype because the thing is that women, they have type C and type D personality traits for the most part. It's more feminine, it's more nurturing, it's more of the supporting thing. Whereas with men, it's more disagreeableness, it's more stern, it's more leadership, it's more masculine. So when most job positions employers, when they see that being put on a woman, it's a bit of a turnoff for them. It says, okay, no, absolutely not. Like, you're not going to come here and tell me what to do. You're not going to tell me to give you a raise. And that's where it kind of stands on that. Because the thing is, especially if we're dealing with negotiators and we're dealing with males especially, if you have an employer, you have rules and you have like a subset of things, right? He's the boss, right? And to the boss, in that sense, if he has a woman and we have this right here, the boss is here and then like everybody else is kind of at the bottom. If he lets someone, like in this case, unfortunately for the woman, like he starts to argue with the woman on everything, now he's not looked upon as the boss. This happens, and now the woman thinks that and feels that she's equal to him. So in that sense, if she were to have type A and even Machiavellianism, it's very hard for them to get by that. Very, very hard. It's unfortunate. I don't mind personally if I'm doing business with a woman, if she's like, you know what, that's unfair in your case especially, where you're like, no, I should get paid because I'm doing this type of work. And correct me if I'm wrong, isn't it against the law to discriminate with like pays and things like that?
It
like,
sure is.
So if that's the case, you've got a case on you. You can fight back on this. Like, okay, well, why is this person he's getting paid more, but we're doing the exact same thing. I have 5 cases, he has 5 cases. I won 5 cases, he won 5 cases. I spend equal amount of work in the office. I take no days off. I take no vacations, same as him. If it's just like that, you have a case here because they are discriminating against you at that point. They cannot just pay you less like that. So I will agree with you 100%. Like if it's like that, equal, yeah, you deserve to get paid. Absolutely. And even negotiating like that is like, well, that's not right. Because I do the same amount of work as everybody else here. I take no days off, so you should get paid.
But it's also frowned upon. You're not supposed to talk about pay with your colleagues. So sometimes people don't find out until after the fact.
Yeah.
And then, like, how do they fight for that? Like, you can't go to your boss and be like, I know you fired me, but I should have been paid this because so-and-so did the same thing as me and gets paid that, you know? Like, I know at any firm that I've ever worked at, every time raises come around, HR always sends out a reminder, hey, just to let you know, you're not allowed to talk about your pay, at least not on company property. Like, that should be kept private type of thing.
That's how they avoid lawsuits.
Yes.
And I'll say,
I feel like that's the trickiest, like, the easiest way. And I feel like it hasn't been more of a factual, like, problem because like it's hard to say. There's so many different factors that go into it, to where you can't specifically say I have exactly 5 cases. I have exactly 5 cases. Like some of those factors vary a lot too.
Right.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and I'll speak in. So, not my current job, but my prior job, we had a female program manager that she had to be more masculine than the other managers just to get her point across. She got paid the same, but she was not respected unless she demasculated the other managers. And that's how she got that equal pay. That's how she got her respect. And it shouldn't happen that way.
I agree.
But also, like, to your point when you were saying, like, oh, if a woman stands up for themselves in the same way a man does, then they're disrespectful. My favorite thing that people always say, well, she must be on her period, or she has an attitude, or something happened at home, or, like, those are the excuses that are stereotypical that shouldn't be.
Yeah. No, I concur with you guys 100%, and this is why, like, if everything is exactly the same, then you should get paid the same, no matter what. I think the only thing I can add on to this, kind of to your point, is if you were to go up to your boss, and of course, yeah, you don't want to talk about pay with the colleagues and things like that. There's a bunch of problems can happen there for sure. Definitely have a one-on-one conversation with the manager, whoever your higher up is, and say, hey, look, and represent your case. You have to get violent with a person, anything like that. Just say, hey, look, I've been here for 5 years, okay? I've done a lot of work here, and I do the same amount of work. I don't take any days off, whatever it might be, right? And then we kind of just go from there. But the only time it's not going to work against you, but the only time they'll probably say, well, we can't pay you this, is if they actually have proof, of course, that, well, you're not getting paid this because of reasonable things. Like, you aren't working as long as these guys are. You aren't getting into as many cases of these. You see what I mean? Like, that's where the discrepancy comes in. But if your case, if it's true, if it's 100% true, where you're doing everything equal and you're getting paid less, and, well, we got a case here. We 100% have a case here, 100%. So I will say I agree with that. If you have a discrepancy there, then yeah, you got to fight that 100%. But if everything is equal, that's where it's like, well, then there is no wage gap if everything is equal. So I agree more with you than, I don't think I disagree, honestly. It's more of an agreement. It's just complimenting and kind of adding on to that and such. Find out to see, like, what's the deal, and then we can kind of find out from there. Is there truly a discrepancy on my end or on their end? And kind of just go from there.
Yeah, and then you also got, like, websites like Glassdoor.com to where pay is transparent.
Yeah.
And it'll give you, like, some of those, like, hey, experience with 5 years for this. Of course, it doesn't include all the factors, but yeah. I think that could be a possible reason on why Glassdoor became a thing. To make sure there's fair pay between different sexes, as well as colleagues and experience, and something to look up to. Like, I know when I was previously looking for a job, I kind of looked at, okay, what should I be asking for monetarily wise, to kind of figure out my experience and go from there. Absolutely. And as long as you have the education, you have all this stuff, you don't have much to worry about. It's just, if you see that there is a discrepancy within pay, then yeah, you have the right to say something. It's against the law, so you have 100% a case on there. Yeah. So that's pretty good. And just kind of adding on to this and such, and I'm a numbers guy. I love statistics. Just kind of curious, is there possibly a statistic and potential that we can probably look up later on or something where it's like, sure. Yeah, for men and females and like how much they make and such, and then like kind of the roles they usually play, because that would be kind of a good reference point to say, okay, well, is there truly a wage gap, or is it mostly because on the women's side they're doing this and then the men's side they're doing that? So we can kind of have like a more of a background on like what it is from there on out and such. So I think that would be good. I think that would be pretty good and such. So can we turn that around real quick though?
Yeah. Go ahead.
So can we talk about the differences on expectations instead of wages, like the expectations between a man and a female? For instance, like nursing is predominantly dominated by women. Mm-hmm. But are they expected to do the same thing as male nurses? I feel I could, like, I don't know from experience because I'm not a nurse, but like a good example would be, I feel like the male would be expected to lift more things because they have muscles, whereas like the women don't have to do as much like gritty work like that. Mm-hmm. What do you guys say about that?
So what I have to say about that, ultimately, again, it just depends on how much work you're willing to put down. That's the thing. Because if let's say this, right? Like if someone chooses to work at McDonald's and you're working in your engineering job, and then you found out that just flipping burgers makes the same amount as you're doing your job, that would be kind of weird now, wouldn't it? Because they're not doing as much as he is, and they especially didn't spend the time on the education and such. So the expectation wise, just to kind of answer your question on expectations, at the end of the day, it's always going to boil down to what they're doing. It always will be. The employer is going to give you a task. If you say that you cannot acquiesce to this task, then the stage is set. It really is. I understand when it comes to like the physicality of certain things, it is what it is kind of at that time, and especially in sports. Like if we compare like the WNBA and the NBA is far outpaying the WNBA. And would I like for the WNBA to get paid like I do, because I do think these women work. I do think that they're taking time to shoot properly and this and that. But at the end of the day, if we were to ask any normal person, anybody, they're gonna say, yeah, I'd rather watch the NBA because it's peak performance. Testosterone. They're stronger. They're faster. They jump higher. They're more accurate. If they get into fights, it's like someone's gonna break a nose or things like that. And it's the what is. That's basically what it is. One thing we promote on this channel is we have to say the what is. And yeah, we can talk about hypotheticals and anecdotes and things like that. But the thing is that, again, like, my opinion, as I mentioned, yes, I would love for the women to get paid as much as the men, but unfortunately that's determined by the audience. That's determined by how many people watch and go to the sporting events, and then how much the organization is making to pay out. That's the thing. So it's determined ultimately by that, and so at the end of the day, it's always on what they do. Now, let's make a fun hypothetical here, actually. It's not going to happen, but let's just have some fun with this, right? Let's say a woman goes into the NBA and she somehow performs equally, or even better for all we know. She will receive the same pay. I 100% no doubt about that. Why? Because she's she's performing the same, basically. She's running at the same pace. She's jumping high or equal to some of the guys. She's ball handling very, very well. She's quick, agile. They're going to pay her because of what she puts into it, the work, right? And that's a fair thing to say. And then I hope this answers your question and such, but the expectations are always going to be placed on what could be done at the end of the day. So that's where the pay is going to be, unfortunately. That's just it.
So I'm going to step in real quick.
Yeah, good.
I feel like sports is just different from an actual job, as you get paid more as a sports company, whatever you want to call it, when there's more drama, when there's more attention. The NBA, there's a lot of drama going on. They have Draymond Green, who's always, fouling people and doing, you have LeBron James and his kids. Like, people want to watch that, and people show up to games for that drama. WNBA, there's been no drama. There you go.
There's something about that. Yeah.
The viewership on that one game made more than the rest of the 15, 16 games of the Kansas City Chiefs, because Taylor Swift came on and she was on TV for maybe 5, 6, 7 brief times. So, looking at the WNBA, it made 20% more in profit this year. Why? Because that one chick, I can't remember her name, she showed up, number 1 draft pick, and she came to this team, and she is trying to perform, and people are shutting her down. People are talking bad about her, people are fouling her, and that drama has increased the viewership. It has now increased the number of people that are watching, which will eventually increase the pay.
Yeah, the propaganda. Nowadays, when it comes to propaganda and setting stigmatism, that's usually what kind of runs the media and things like that. Now, is it to a point where it could be a little over redundant? Yeah, but people will do it because they know it brings viewership. Now, we can think of a lot of ways, honestly, for the WNBA or women's soccer or female MMA. We can think of a bunch of ways to make it more exciting. We can, honestly. But at the end of the day, again, it's going to boil down to, at least in that aspect, right, in that industry, is what people really want to watch, right? And what they perform. Like, if let's say out of nowhere that how about this? Right, let's have more fun with this. Like, let's say in male MMA, they wear these gloves where it's like so cushioned to the point where you can't knock anybody out, right? Just because they softened up a little bit. It sounds weird. I know, but I'm going somewhere with this, right?
So you're in an inflatable bubble.
Pretty much, yeah. Like, you ever seen those sock and boppers from the 1980s? It's kind of like that. Yeah, kind of like that. Fun than a pillow fight. Yeah, so for the 90s guys, okay, this is for you guys.
Yep.
So just a crazy scenario here, right? Let's say the MMA, Dana White just said, you know what, I don't like doing this anymore. Let's soften it up. But then female MMA, they kept doing it. Where do you think the audience is going to go now?
Oh, definitely no.
Now you see, so because they want to see blood, they want to see blood and people get knocked out, things like that. Like that's MMA, you know what I mean?
Violence is the
I
answer.
actually got.
It's definitely the answer.
I actually got a topic for you. I'm not sure if you heard about this. WWE is now moving to Netflix, and they're removing the PG-13 rating from it. And people online, Facebook, I was just looking at it. They were saying we want to bring back the bra and panties match. We want to see the women getting bra and panties in fights.
It's the Attitude Era, I believe.
What do you feel about that?
They're gonna do whatever it takes to gain more traction.
Yeah.
Now, if they're going to make these big jumps, okay, because think of it like this, right? If I can remember this, like, did you watch WWE also, or have you kept up with like the trends or anything like that?
Not currently. I used to sneak it when I was a kid.
Oh, okay, that's cool. Because I want you to be a part of this also and such. So if I have to explain something, it's fine. So, when we were in the PG-13 era, when we had like Evolution and we had the bra and panties match and stuff, that's when like we had a lot of hardcore fans, right?
Oh yeah.
But then we decided to make it a little bit more PG. So we took away the bra and panties match. You barely see blood, like on the tactic and stuff.
Man,
Yeah.
I remember Mankind versus I think it was Undertaker. He was just bleeding all down his face, and it was the good time.
So the great times actually. So we moved away from the Attitude Era, and we wanted to but WWE wanted to go into more of like the kids demographics. So they wanted to sell more products. So John Cena comes on in. Right, he comes on in and he's wearing all these colors and he's going to all these like children's events and foundations and things like that, which is cool. I think that's great, because these kids are kind of sick and things like that. Their last wish, see their favorite wrestlers and things. I think that's a good cause, 100%. Keep doing that. Keep on doing it. They still do it actually, but you got to understand also, like even when you're just running any type of business, like you at the end of the day, you got to give people what they want. Always. So, like, if you're going to Italy, like, let's say, because they're famous for, like, fish and pasta from I've never been to Italy, but I hear that's what they do. And you're going to a place, and you're in a demographics area where everybody likes pizza, right? But then you just decide to open up a burger shack there. When burgers aren't really well known there, you're not going to really generate so much traction. You might have that little buzz, like, oh, wow, look at this. But then it's like, well, we kind of like pizza here. We're known for that. We want to eat pizza this, pizza that.
Yeah.
So ultimately, as fate would proceed, the business might fall apart, right? Because you're just not gaining traction. So did we lose a little bit of the base with people? I stopped watching for a little bit because it just didn't seem so exciting to me. But now that we're getting new wrestlers and the talent looks really good, and now that what you're saying, we're moving out of Peacock from what you're saying, and now we're going into Netflix. I say let's go for it, because not only are you going to bring back fans, but you're also going to bring in new fans, because when they start seeing all this intense stuff and all this variety, because variety is good. Like, definitely you want to keep that variety. Then I think my thoughts on that is I say go for it. But you got to be a little careful with it. You got to be careful, because the thing is that we haven't had bra and panties for a very long time. I don't know what the demand is on that.
It's not much, but we're also not in those 90s times where people kind of expected that. They in the 90s, TV shows, they were more edgy, they were more controversial, they were more, and nowadays everything's censored. Like, you gotta worry about what you say, because it'll get on social media and people will, what do you call it, ban you, censor you. Cancel. Yeah.
And see, let's talk about that actually. It wasn't one of the main topics I want to talk about, but let's talk about that, because that's a good point.
All right.
Now, see, here's the thing. At the end of the day, we have to take accountability for our own actions, no matter what. I think that's missed in our timeline right now, right? And of course, we talk about relationships a lot, but we're going to kind of shift a little bit here.
Right.
If we're going to bring the bra and panties matches, and we have so much technology right now, there's parental control, right? So I think if WWE or any show is going to start stopping kids from watching certain things. You got to have better parental control. You just have to. Even game systems have that. I think the Switch was the first one that you might be familiar with. That the Nintendo Switch had that at first, where if you can't play at a certain time and it gets shut off, or if it's like a rated M game, if the kid tries to play, they need like a password or something something like that. You know what I mean? So you got to have some control there. So I think it's a little rubbish when I think freedom of speech is barely a thing. I'm going to be very honest with you. Look at that. Because look at YouTube. Like, we can say corn, okay, like corn and grape and things like that. But the moment someone says, oh, well, we don't like that word, things like, okay, but like, we're saying it in context of our conversation. We're not trying to promote it. We're trying to go against it. So I think it's a little rubbish, but also it's also irresponsible on the viewers. I'm going to say it that much. It's very irresponsible because we're shying away from real problems that are happening, and we're trying, like us right now, like we're trying to think of pragmatic ways to solve the issues. But how can we solve it if we're not sitting down talking about it, acknowledging it? I do have a problem with that, actually. So now kind of going into this, with the relationships, like when we have, we're going to have different movements, right? We have like the soft guy era now, right? Where we do have women, not all, of course, but we'll have women say, well, we think men should be more in their feminine. We think men should stop trying to be the leader and this and that. It's like, okay, but see, here's the thing. Biologically, historically, that's always been what we were born to do. 100%. And I would even argue, even studies that we can show right now, that's what women want. In fact, let's do that right now, actually. We can pull up a study here. Let's see here. We can go on the Discord here. I forget the name of it, actually. You can kind of pull it up here.
You got the name?
Yeah, I got it right here. Yeah, I'm gonna pull this up here.
So also, I think like what you're describing is exactly like cancel culture. People are so afraid to be canceled and to be disagreed with, to where they're just gonna lie down to the
No, not that. Keep going. I'm so sorry.
That was it.
Oh,
also,
yeah.
to add to your point, like with kids being involved in WWE and like MMA and stuff like that, like you have a whole WWE section in Walmart in the kids' toy section. Like they're promoting that for kids. So now to kind of like take it away, it's like, wait, what? Like my kid loves this wrestler and now like they can't watch it? Or to be honest, kids these days watch things that they really shouldn't be.
Yeah.
I mean, I can go into a whole slew of TikTok. Kids should not be on TikTok. Kids should not have social media. I feel like you can even go backwards as little kids shouldn't have phones.
Yeah.
At a young age.
I know this is deviating from our main topic, but like even like Roadblocks, the kid game, whatever, like they had a whole, I guess, segment that was it Squid Games or whatever, where people would die and get killed off and everything. Like, it's been different.
Yeah.
It's been different. And like kids should not be playing that, but even for a game that's rated E for everyone, they find a way to twist it to make it,
No, and that's the thing too, because when we're talking about like video games, and then just like if kids want to get into politicians as well, like that's a whole different story. Mm-hmm. But see, the other thing too is that we have a little bit of I won't say a little bit, we have a big epidemic right now when it comes to single family households. Because of that, we now have more degeneracy. We now have more kids in which are involved in crime, involved in behavioral problems, mental issues. They're going to jail most of the time, and then we have the lack of masculinity that comes into the family, which is the single motherhoods. And if we understand, I think we already had a conversation about this some time ago, I believe. We know, based off even the first episode, I talked a lot about like where we are right now, right? Right now, we are suffering in marriages. They're failing 50 to 56% of the time. That's one. 80% of them are initiated by women, and then 90% of them are initiated also by women if they're college educated. Now, we know, and I think this is something we've talked a lot about when it comes to our podcast. We've talked a lot about how women are extremely selective. And I've always said they have the right to be, as a matter of fact. Why is that? I want to ask the both of you, why are women so selective? There's a good reason for that.
I feel like they've gotten more power. They've gotten more ability to speak their mind or to be selective, because it's not necessarily what always the man wants. Like we can go back into the 1960s, 1970s to where the man initiated everything. I mean, you got women that are proposing to men, and that's not super random or rare these days. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I second her opinion. Like, I think 20, 30, 40 years ago, like, it was expected that the woman should do the dishes, they should clean, they should take care of the house, all that. I think we're moving towards an era where women and men are finally getting close to equal. Do I think they're the same? Do I think they're wired the same? No. But in terms of roles, in terms of pay, in terms of responsibilities, I do believe that we're getting towards a place where it's closer to equal.
I mean, I'll even further go into it. Like, our household, we share responsibilities, like, literally straight down the middle. I do the laundry, he does the dishes. We both cook half the time. He does the floors, and I take care of the dog. like, it's split in half, not because of the women should do X, Y, and Z, they should be only the homemaker, but because I also have a job, and he has a job, and we both live there together, and like what he told me when we first moved in, hey, I'm making the messes too, therefore I'm going to help clean him. And I don't think that's super common these days.
Yeah, because, and here's the thing about that also. So now, here's where we'll probably debate a little bit. I mean, yes, finally, yes. Here's where we can get it right. So here's the thing. So here's where I can agree with the first part, right? Now, we already are, actually. I would say we even started doing this even after the Industrial Revolution, as a matter of fact, when women started getting white-collar jobs, and then even with the 19th Amendment and women's suffrage movement, and then when sexual contraceptives came out. That's when a lot of shifting started happening. Now, we can blame so many things at the end of the day, but we try to promote, okay, this is what we need to do to kind of move forward with things. Now, as far as with the equalness and us being the same and things like that, I do agree that men and women are not the same. It's never been that way. If we were the same, you and I would produce the same amount of testosterone. You would have genitalia like me. You would have the same brain mass as me, and then the centimeters and the growth, and same muscle mass as me, and same patterns of thinking in certain ways, right? So because of that, because of our biology, because of how we act, how we think, how we perform tasks, we're never going to be the same in that. And that's perfectly fine, as a matter of fact, because at the end of the day, we're better together. We complement each other.
Yeah.
It's not about you're better than me or I'm better than you, because I think that's a message that's being socially constructed in a very negative way. And what we tell men all the time here is like, you have roles, okay? We're very big when it comes to roles, and women have roles. So when we decide to throw away the roles, that's where problems start to come in, right? So, and I would even say to this very day, the hardwiring, I think that we had a conversation about this, the biological hardwiring has not changed. Our methods on how we kind of move around and things like that, living and technology, that's evolved from that standpoint. But our human biology, what we want and how we find success in life has not changed at all. So for instance, and this is something Chris and I we talked about, and you've probably seen it in one of the episodes, right? I always talk about men have to understand what women want. We have to understand what women want to a certain degree. There's no way.
But do they?
A lot of them don't.
Just saying.
A lot of them don't, right? And no, I agree with you. A lot of them really don't. We have a lot of beta males, and we have a lot of men who just kind of don't know what they're doing, and they don't have anything going for themselves. So that's a problem. So we have this discrepancy, and we can even pull up an OkCupid study where 80% of women 80% of men are seen below average to women. And this is through a dating app, right? But this also kind of goes to show you, and it translates to life as well, because women are very selective. And I go back to that because they deserve to be. You want to know why? Because if we can go back all the way to history, every single time, nomadic times, they're the hunters and they're the gatherers. The hunters were who?
The men.
The men. Why?
Because they had the ability, the strength, and the biological ability to hunt better than women at that time.
I would even say the courage, too, to kill, to provide for their family. I don't know that women necessarily had the courage way back then, or the strength, or the brutality to kind of departmentalize that.
Yeah. And because the thing is, the reason why I'm asking you that as well is because there's a baseline, right? We have that whole foundation. So And so your response and such, yes. So women had their roles. They didn't want to hunt. They didn't want to be this big protector because women are valuable. I always say women are valuable. Okay, why are they valuable? Because they are the ones carrying our future. They are the ones in paternal investment. So if men understand that, I guess not up to a great start, but we understand. Okay, like you guys have to understand, like they're the ones making the paternal investment. So now where am I going with this? When we go with this, we understand as the man, if we go back in nomadic times, their ability was to provide, give resources, protect in time of need, hunt, bring food back into the herd, into their little huts and I forget, there was like a name for this, but basically their big domain where they were having the fires and clothes and huts and everything like that. They had their own habilitation area, right? They had their habits. And then the woman's role, and this is where the strengths were, right? And if we're going off more on the behaviorism, right? Men were better in that sense when, not better as like they're better than women. They had better cognitive navigation, right? So the navigation, their role was that they would look for places. So that way, them and their kin would rest, find salvation with certain materials, and they can start foraging food and animals, and then of course like the bigger animals don't come in and kill them, anything like that, right? Yeah. And then when they pick the place, the woman's job, her role was a little bit more on cognitive recognition. So they were very good at picking fruits. The smell, the taste, does it look ripe? Does it smell good? Did it come from a good area? Is the soil good? They have good memorization when it came to that. Yeah, they always knew that. That was their strength. So men were always going to do the hunting side, and then the gathering side was going to be the women. That was their role. Here's where some discrepancies came in. And here's where I think Chris and you and I talked about kind of where it comes to, it's a transaction. Mm-hmm. If a woman mates selected poorly, even in that time, she does her part. She does the gathering, the fruits, the plants, and feeding the children from the kin, right? And then the mate who she chose does not do his role. Like, he doesn't go out hunting. He's lazy. He sits around all day and tries to pick off their gatherings. She doesn't give him anything. And then just kind of dumps him off and says, look, you're not doing your part. You're supposed to be protecting me. Women want protectors. They want men who are going to lead. They want men who are going to say, look, I got it. Don't worry. I'd like for you to take care of our children, okay? I'll be here also providing and taking care of the children. That formed, even in that sense, the nuclear family. I would even argue that's how it all started from there, even though there were no houses and things like that, right? Mm-hmm. And then whenever the men came back and with the provisions, he gave it to the whole village, even if there were men and women who didn't really do their parts, because that's our job. We provide, we give back to as much as we possibly can. Then even building society is kind of what we were talking about with like the STEM jobs and things like that. So that's kind of going back more historically on why roles, even to this day, severely matter, right? Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I do, actually. So, I know it's probably not going to be a great topic for this podcast because I know...
That's okay.
All right, so let's talk about two lesbians.
Okay.
One will most likely be more masculine, one will be more feminine. Mm-hmm. One will be the hunter, the other one will be the gatherer. The roles have now in this society almost flipped, almost morphed, where there are masculine women, there are feminine men. So is it truly still biological? What do you think?
I truly do, because the reason why I say it's truly I was about to say diabolical. So it's biological because when I think men have to go through certain phases. If we have men, and this is kind of going with the degeneracy, right? Yeah. The degeneracy comes in for boys because when they grow up in single-family households, they don't fare the same when it comes to single-father households and double-parent. Yeah. Father households and double-parent fare about equivalent, but the single-mother house is not so much. We do have a study actually here, and we're going to have to find that in a moment, and that one's going to be a little bit more on kind of the nurturing side, right? So contrary, very, very contrary to popular belief, I hate to say it, to be honest with you, there's a podcaster, she's very religious actually, her name is Rachel Wilson. Have you guys heard of her?
I have not.
No. Yeah, I think she's Christian. She's married to this one guy named Andrew Wilson. And do you guys know who Pearl Davis is?
No. Pearl Davis?
Yeah.
Oh, Pearly Things?
Yeah, Pearly Things.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, so I didn't like this, to be honest with you, but again, it is what it is. So there's this whole thing about women are supposed to be the nurturers, right? And when I read this study, which we're going to pop this up in a moment, this study was basically talking about how there was a myth that was debunked that women are supposed to be like the biggest nurturers, like they're supposed to be good nurturers, but a myth was debunked that they're not doing a great job at doing that. And it's actually the men who are better at nurturing. Now, as crazy as that sounds, because again, it's like, well, let me see why. Why is that? And this is before I knew everything that I'm talking about right now. And we can kind of pull this up right now, actually, Chris. Let me see. It's a fairly recent one here. This one is called... It's called 45 Years of Data Disproving the Myth That Husbands Are the Abusers.
All right. You want to read some comments meanwhile?
This is dated back to... Yeah, we can read some comments. This is dating back to June 9th. June 9th. Alright, so we can read some of the comics here. Now, yeah, the big background. Thank you guys. Dr. Cervantes, we got to get back to the past. Get back, well, but see, here's the thing. We got to work for a better future. Let's work for a better future. Today, they don't have any moral values. Yeah, that's something. Today, good is bad, right is wrong, up is down. Yeah, it's a lot of role reversing here and stuff. So while Chris is pulling up that study, we can kind of go back on this. So the reason why we have this...
the recent ones or what?
June 6th. So the dates are there. So if you go back, it's June 9th. I'm sorry, June 9th. So if we look at this, okay, we've already discussed women are more neurotic, right? They're more neurotic. They tend to go through more negative emotions. Let me see here. There's actually some data as well where they tend to abuse the elderly a lot more, which that's a little crazy to me.
Wait, what?
They tend to abuse the...
Hold on, women tend to abuse the elderly more than men? Is that
Yes.
what you're saying?
Yes.
This was in the Discord. Did you not read it?
Oh,
I read it.
Maybe I missed it.
Oh, she's keeping up. Oh, she's paying attention. I like that. I like that you're getting on this now. And again, like when I say this stuff, when the unplugging says, we're not the only ones, by the way, but when we talk about this, again, it's not to shed a negative light on men and women. It's just to understand what goes on in the nature and how we can kind of combat that to make it better. That's one thing I want everybody to understand. So when I say something like this, and again, it sounds bad, I get it, but when there's statistics that prove that, we have to go off the what is. We have to go off, okay, so we have the statistic.
Hold on. It's taking a while. I don't know why it's taking a while to download.
Okay, so I do want to say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was
Well,
going to say earlier, I respect you. I know you do your research. You're a great guy. A lot of the points that you made, I do agree with.
Sure.
Here's the thing about statistics. I do not believe statistics are facts. I looked up a couple of the articles.
37 minutes for this.
37 minutes?
I don't know what the hell.
I really wanted to show this study too. Oh my goodness! Like I've had this study up
Only
since.
600 kbs.
So you have to download it, really? It doesn't like just open up as like something else on Discord?
Yeah.
Hey, be prepared.
It's right here.
I really want to show you guys this one. I've been waiting to pull this one up somewhere. It's like I'm gonna find a way to pull this up. Oh my goodness.
Alright, anyways.
Yeah,
back
go
to my point. So, I did look up a couple of your survey statistics, everything.
Sure.
The one thing, me being a mad at science, I want to know how many people have done this survey. How accurate would it be?
Right. Yeah, and as we know, with go ahead. I'm sorry, you were saying something.
Yeah. So a lot of the surveys did not show that data. The few that I found, it was 10 to 20,000 people.
Which is an extremely large sample size. Like usually, if it comes to like a state, 300 is a bare minimum number. But if we're talking about, let's say, if we're counting maybe the whole United States, even 3,000 is enough. Like if you ask peer-reviewed studies on the science, I've worked with scientists also, with back at Noah Southeastern University, and this is what we studied as well.
Sure.
If there is an extremely small sample size, it's very hard to make correlations, and it's very hard to kind of say, okay, well, this is that. Like if I made a study right now, let's say just the three of us, and then there's well over millions, billions of people in the world, we can't make an account and say, okay, well, based off these three people, I do this and you do that and then you do that. Like we're too different. We don't. There's hardly a cohort. Like in fact there is no cohort because. Like I'm more into fitness and I'm more into real estate and entrepreneurship. So you're more into IT and you probably do some fitness as well. And then you have your litigations management job and then you cook certain things and then you're into fitness. Like we're not a fair cohort. So we can't legitimize data when there's no cohort. The best ways we can make studies is through randomized studies, double-blinded studies. Those are the best ways. And if they're cohorts, like we have a placebo, and then we have multiple groups, mostly 2 groups, then we can really differentiate if something has validity and has reliability. That's what it comes down to and such. But the sample size, you do need a sample size 100%. Now, over 3,000 is phenomenal. We do have some studies that are even 7,000, which will already give us a good correlation because there's other follow-up studies. What makes studies reliable too is follow-ups and other citations in which make it reliable as well. So if I pull up a study right now and it's the only one of its kind, it might have a little bit of strength if it's peer-reviewed. If the fact that it's peer-reviewed, it already gives it validity and it gives it strength and it gives it title. Because in order for an authentic study to actually go through, it does have to go through a process. It has to go through a board to say, okay, what are the methods? What are the procedures? How long was this study conducted for? And what were the results that kind of came out of that? What did it meet the expectations? Is this something that we can kind of put in the science board? Could we put it in public? It does go through a bit of a process. So that's pretty much just to kind of throw that in there of how like the studies are actually legitimate. I do want to say something about that. You don't believe that statistics are facts, but go ahead, please finish it.
So this is purely my opinion. So I'm going to go into this. So there's 333 million people in the U.S.
Okay.
When you take a survey of 7,000, that's less than 0.001%. How is that an accurate representation of people that are actually believing or giving the survey? And think about it. How many people do surveys? What kind of people do surveys? People that are not happy. Happy people, they don't give, almost cursed, they don't really care about doing a survey because they're happy. They're living their great life. They are being people. But people that are irritated, that are frustrated, that do not like their life, these are the people that do surveys. And so you have 7,000 people who are pissed off, who are angry, who are giving their opinion. And that's not even including the world. There's 8 billion people in the world, and you have 7,000 people who are probably in the U.S., not including all these other countries or regions or people that believe in these values. I mean, shit, like, I already did it.
It's okay, you're passionate. You're passionate.
I mean,
okay.
At one point, if you took a survey about maybe 200-300 years ago, everybody believed the world was flat. Is that a fact? We know it not to be true, but people believed that was a fact back then. If you took a survey, people believed that. Now, people still believe the world is flat. And if you have a person who's pissed off and still believes the world is flat, you don't think some of those people are in that survey? So how is that valid?
I'll tell you what. So my first question to that kind of here, well, let me actually answer this question because I don't want to derail anything.
Yeah.
So regarding that, this is why we have replications of studies. This is why. So as I mentioned before, if we only have one study and it shows us like a certain result, we can go off it however way we want. And you have to also this is where pragmaticness comes in. There's no way we're going to be able to get all 3 billion, 7 million, whatever people. There's no way.
Yeah.
So that's part of being pragmatic. You have to be realistic about studies. There's no way we're going to get all those people. So how are we going to validify everything? We have to get a large enough sample size to see a significant difference.
Yeah.
So if we're able to get the statistics, like I mentioned before, if we're doing a small demographic, it's 300 people at least for the sample size, right?
Yeah.
But if we're doing it like in a large population, right, and maybe a little bit of the whole world, you're going to see over 3,000, somewhere around there. Now, again, because you do that one study, does it mean that this is the end-all be-all? No, I wouldn't say that, and I've done studies myself too. Yeah, it's not the end-all be-all. What gives it strength and power are replications of the study. That's what gives it replications. So if you have 20 other studies that have done the same thing, and maybe some differences, just to kind of see what result they would get, it gives the original study and so forth more power and more clout, if you want to say that, right? But it gives it more validity and reliability, because now if we're even testing it in different parts in the world, like let's say we test it in Florida, then we do the same thing now in Russia, Then we do the same thing in Siberia, and it goes on over and over again. It gives the studies more strength. So my disagreement on that would be, it will be valid if it's done right, and if you understand that you're testing out in different demographics. Because I can easily say, well, protein shakes, right? Protein shakes only work here in Florida because we've only tested Floridians. But then it's like, well, that's not really true, because, like, just kind of thinking outside the box here, we're people. Like, if we've tested that it doesn't have adverse effects when it comes to kidney and organ function. But someone can easily come up to me and say, okay, well, what about in Siberia? What about in Russia? Like, what about these people who have, like, disease and such? Excellent questions, by the way. Excellent questions. So where do we go now? We do more studies in different demographics with different people, which is what most of the time it's done. It's a big thing in exercise science, actually. It's done on different ethnicities. It's done on different genres. It's done on different states and everything around there. So it gives the studies more validation and reliability and more strength. That's where my argument stands on that. Okay. The other thing also that you're mentioning is you're mentioning about angry people doing it. That's a bold claim, actually, because if you were to say that, are all the people who do studies angry and upset about something, or do they just legitimately want to see if there's a scientific breakthrough and they can help the population out?
I'll bring this out. Have either you have done a survey about relationships?
I have not, actually. I've looked them up.
Do you think yourself being a happy person?
I do. I'm pretty happy.
Okay.
I don't think I have. I'm not sure.
I've never felt the need to. So that's just part of my point. I'll also say
surveys in general, though.
True,
yeah.
But I will also say
I did more for like fun, if anything. It's not, they're not really meant to be taken serious, to be honest with you. Like, if I look at a survey and it's something kind of like, even if it's relationships, I'm gonna say, okay, this is a survey about relationships, but I'm not going to say that I'm unhappy. So, okay, survey about relationships. Might be some interesting questions. Might be kind of like what we're asking, right? Like I asked you, so we were talking about roles, right? Do you think there are roles? You say yes or no, but if you say no, I'm not going to immediately say you're unhappy. If you say yes, I'm also not going to say you're immediately unhappy. I'm going to go as far as saying that's a little bit on bad faith, because like, that's not what people really do studies for in general. Like, we do these studies and surveys to be pragmatic and kind of see what the statistics are on most things. Is it going to be 100% accurate? Probably not, but it's going to give us that foundation, that baseline on, okay, where are we right now? We're in a place right now where if we do relationships and then 80% of them say, okay, relationships suck. Okay, all right, but I'm not going to say right off the bat, okay, they're unhappy. I'm going to say, okay, what's going on? Why are 80% of the people within the sample size saying relationships are terrible? What's the problem there? Now, me, as the conductor, I have to move forward with this. Okay, do I stop here and just say, screw it, whatever, we're not going anywhere with this? Okay, no, hold on a second. Because if we're thinking long-term, outside the box, what happens is if we derail ourselves from relationships, guess what? Birth rates go down. Marriages go down. Secularism increases. Religion is probably not going to be as big of a buffer. No father figures are going to be around, and then there's going to be more irresponsibility happening around. So we're increasing the epidemiology on single motherhood, single fatherhood, and I've always said that we're better together and such. So that's where my thought process is. If I see that, I'm not going to immediately say that we're unhappy. No, we're trying to figure out, what are the trends? What are the trends? What are certain things that are going on? Is this a problem? And this is why we have the podcast as well, because we're trying to be pragmatic and we're trying to problem solve to make sure that everyone's good. I want to see men and women happy together. I want to see lesbian couples also happy together. I want to see gays happy and such. Like, at the end of the day, you have the full autonomy and agency to do whatever you want. But if we're seeing declines in certain things, don't you think it's our responsibility as people, as a nation, as a democracy, to come together and try to solve that? You know what I mean? Get us out of the bubble. Help out. That's the purpose. That's the entire purpose of everything.
I think one of the best parts about statistics, I think you mentioned it before, is a lot of statistics like that are negative, just like the elder abuse situation. Like, that's being brought to light and for us to be able to change it. If in your example, if you say 80% of the people are unhappy or negative about relationships, I feel like you don't necessarily want to publish something that drastic to, like you said, decrease birth rate, decrease marriages, versus, okay, let me get a bigger sample size and kind of get more of a genuine number. to see how can we improve this? How can we make this a better situation or avoid birth rates going down and, marriages declining and yeah.
And that's perfect. I like that because you know what the unfortunate side of doing some studies are? It's very unfortunate. So why are you going to do the study then? You know what I mean? It's in this particular case, like that, because we're trying to download. I do apologize for that, by the way. I do apologize for
we're
this.
buying time. It's cool. It's cool.
I do apologize for kind of the loading time and stuff like that.
That's okay.
Oh, that's not bad.
We'll bring up this one other study. If it comes down to that, then it's okay. We'll try to prepare a little bit better for that one. But yeah, we'll shake this on like a different time. It's fine. Now, regarding this, like unfortunately, like when we bring up things like that, like even that OkCupid study, which you probably have seen, right, where we talk about that 80% of men are considered below average or hence undesirable to women. I tried finding this. You know how hard it was for me to find that study? Like, I went on Google, I went on Scholar, I went on like so many different sources. And then I found it through a different website that kind of linked it, but it was very half-assed. Like, it only showed me 2 graphs. It didn't show me like the 10 graphs that I thought it was going to show me. And it was very watered down. And look, with studies like that, I can understand because, again, like we're in this like era where you can get canceled. And if you say something wrong, which I think is wrong because at the end of the day, like, I can understand if we have a pure misandrist or a misogynist online saying, I hate men, I hate women, blah, blah, blah. So, okay, cancel that person. Like, that's pure toxicity right there. Like, what's this person doing? But if I'm showing you, if we're showing data and other people are trying to show it, we're not trying to, dunk on people. It's like, look, this is it. Can we please just come together and figure out solutions on how we're going to get through this? So that's kind of where it is. So what they do is that even with some of the studies, some of them are gone forever. And they could be published like yesterday, they're gone immediately. And then we try to look for them, it's like, where are they? I just had it. Or if you try to access, it'll say access denied. Or if you do find it, it's very watered down to what you found originally. Mm-hmm. So it's tough for us to even work with as podcasters, as someone when we're trying to help improve relationships and just help women be better, help men be better together, understanding each other. It hurts that. It hurts that because now when we talk about, okay, we need to find some statistics because there needs to be a baseline for something. Chris, I know you were mentioning that you don't believe statistics are factual. Here's where I think I gave pushback already when I was explaining how studies are actually like proven and things like that. Here's the thing. The only way a fact can be wrong is if another fact kind of outperforms it. Can we agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay, right. And opinions are opinions. They can either be politically correct, somewhat correct, or wrong, things like that. It kind of just goes any way at that point on, right? We can just kind of come to an agreement on that. Now, my thing is that statistics, science, history, biology, that's all there because it innately tells us a story of where we are right now, and how we are right now, and what we're doing to kind of problem solve. So, just like that statistic I showed earlier with like the STEM jobs being a thing, now we know that if we come up to something and then we talk about the wage gaps and things like that, and we've already concluded, say it's more than unlikely. The reason why people are getting paid more versus not paid so much is because of the work and the dedication you're putting into something, right? Had we not shown that, we're gonna be going in circles, don't you think? We're kind of be going in circles, and then we're gonna just assume things. Yeah. I personally don't like to assume things, right? Because if I make an assumption of something, I could be right, but I also could be wrong. If I'm wrong about something, if the unplugging is wrong about something, we're gonna hold ourselves fully accountable for that. Don't you worry. We're gonna do that. Say, okay, like if you proved us wrong about something, you showed me a statistic that proved this other statistic wrong. I was like, you know what? Wow, that's interesting. I'm glad you showed me that. I'm gonna steal that from you. I'm gonna steal that from you. So that's extremely important to know. So I do believe, just to kind of, my counter argument is that statistics, biology, science, history, it's needed to give us a baseline of where I guess debates are going to go and arguments are going to go. So if we don't have that, where are we going? Kind of where are we going from there,
All right, so I'm going to say my 2 things and I'm going to shut up.
No, please. I like the floor to be yours, guys, really, honestly.
So I do believe in some statistics, but it depends on the demographic and people doing these statistics. I looked at, are we going to talk about the
Talk about whatever.
around in the room. That statistic, what, 20% of white women have sexual relations with pit bulls?
Listen, I brought that up.
That one was super random. It was super duper
And it
random.
was by Harvard University.
That's a meme that I found on
So it wasn't
on
real.
YouTube. I don't know if it's real. That's why I asked Bill. I'm like, yo, do your research and check if this is real.
Listen,
So that's what I'm saying. Like, you can't believe every statistic
We don't,
that's
though.
out there.
Yeah.
We don't.
That's fine.
that
But
one,
also
he
needs
just.
to be- it needs to be credible. And we live in the age of misinformation.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
But
Yes.
wait, so you just said like, okay, and that was done by Harvard, as if like anything that's done by Harvard should be taken
That's true. I don't
and
trust
shocked.
Harvard.
But there were multiple references on the Discord that referenced Harvard University as studies. So now I'm immediately saying I discredit it. Now, I was looking at the GSS website.
Uh-huh.
Have you taken a look at it?
General Social Survey. Yeah. Yeah, we have some studies from them actually.
I've seen it. I've looked at their panel.
Mhm.
It is all white men over the age of 40, except for one white female also over the age of 40.
Mhm.
Do you really believe they are including a whole demographic from that? In one of the studies I've seen, I think it was about divorce rates.
Uh-huh.
They looked at 75% men, 25% women. How is that even?
Wait a second, why are you looking at the divorce rates?
It was one of the studies. Like, it was one of the posts that he made, and I looked up, and it was about 10,000 people, and it was 75% men, 25% women.
Mhm. So we would have to pull that study up. If you can remember that study, or we would have to kind of look that up if the internet's going to allow us to do it. That'd be good. So let's break it down one at a time. Because I do want to address every one of your points. I don't want anything can be
Okay.
well, how about the statistics can be biased? Well,
Yeah.
see,
Yeah.
here's the thing about statistics too, right? So it really depends on like kind of the methods, right? It's always going to depend on how the study's formulated.
Can I
Right?
just say, like, he also said the world is flat, so I don't know if I really,
Now we know who this guy is. He likes to, you like to troll us, bro. No, he's cool. He's cool. He's one of our guys. What's it called? We know when he's just joking around about things. Yeah. So kind of let me see here, just to kind of backtrack on what we're doing here. So kind of starting off with the thing that Chris posted. That one, I don't know if he was for real about that, to be honest with you. I really don't. Now, and I even said it on our Discord, it's like, I would have to look into that. I didn't immediately discredit it. I didn't immediately credit it. I said, let me kind of look at this first.
Same here.
It's a little wild to me, because that's pretty wild to me. If it's true, it's like,
make the question, like, just
That's a
pitbulls.
high
Like, what about the other
statistic.
dogs? Like,
That's funny.
That really shouldn't be happening.
Yeah, it's like,
what about terriers?
it was like, if it's below the 10 percentile, it's like, okay. It's still bad, but it's like 20-something%.
A little more
That's
acceptable.
very high.
Not that it should be
But
acceptable.
Not all, yeah.
One in 5 women should be avoided.
It's true, because like if you think about it, in the country, there isn't that many people, mostly white people.
Oh my goodness. So I can say the same thing about statistics
You do freaky shit.
that you can say about reviews, like people leaving reviews at restaurants. How many of them are from disgruntled customers?
They're pissed off people. Pissed off people make
Yeah,
reviews.
and again, this kind of goes back to us being realistic about that, right? So if we're only in a small demographic, we're only going to go off, we have to, really, off that demographic. So if we have like a burger joint or like any restaurant, and it's like kind of like, it's supposed to be the hottest one in town, right? The people who are within that demographics in that area, they go in there and it's the total population for there. We have to be realistic, unless they build up so much clout, and then other countries, people from other countries start to come on in, and then it grows. That takes time. Those types of reviews, not counting like studies, anything like that, they're going to do, it's self-reported. It's basically self-reported. They're going to do their whole self-reports and say, okay, here are our reviews, and then you have Yelp, and then you have all these other internet sites where people could just leave reviews. You're going to have to go off what's there for the most part. And at the end of the day, like I say on the show, like, you guys have the full autonomy. you have the whole autonomy, and you have the full agency to make a decision from there. Because like I said before, even on our podcast, and you seem like you listen very well to like what we talk about on the podcast, it's a database. You take it for what it is. Like, if you think it's useful to you, by all means, great. We're glad to have contributed and helped out, and hope that this information helps you long term. If you don't feel like it provides value, that's fine. It's totally good. And then from there, we kind of just go our ways and things like that, right? So reviews, but here's the thing about reviews, right? There are going to be limitations, right? So reviews versus peer-reviewed studies, there are definitely differences, right? Because the demographics are usually smaller, and a lot of it is very biased. Why is it biased? Because it's not really randomized.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at like specific food, like Indian food, you're not gonna have everybody go try Indian food, right? Yeah. But also like, what makes you so? If you go to a burger joint and one person says it's dry, the burgers are dry. Like, does that discredit you from wanting to try it? Or in the same instance, like, are you the type of person when you look at reviews, are you looking only at the 3-star reviews because you feel like those are more genuine and can give you both the good and the bad? Because, like, I used to believe that. I used to only look at the 3 stars to figure out, okay, like, this is going to be good and bad. Like, it's not going to be completely horrible. These people suck. Like, it's the worst place in the world. They need to shut down. And they, like, put out, they have roaches, but they don't. Like, and then you have people that possibly work there or relatives of the owner or something that are obviously going to give them 5 stars. So what type of person are you? When you're looking at a review, where do you kind of go? Do you look at the good and the bad? Do you look at the 3s? Do you look at all of them? I don't have that much time.
And I'll say also, being in the age of misinformation, we have bots, we have AI, we have all these services that can inflate or deflate certain statistics. Correct. So are we sure these are actual people doing these surveys? Yeah,
and see, that's where the differences come in with those types of reviews versus peer-reviewed studies. Peer-reviewed studies, at least for now, are not AI-generated. They're actually reviewed by our board, which is why I mentioned, which gives it credibility. But to answer your question, because that's a good question. So this is, again, where like a lot of differentiations come on in, right? So if I'm going to look at a peer-reviewed study, like on protein shakes or divorce rates or things like that, and then there have been multiple studies that have been conducted that give it reliability and validity, I'm going to go off by that. Because, like, okay, there have been multiple studies that prove this. Is there that possible chance of error? I'm going to look at that chance of error and say, okay, what was it? I'm going to think a little bit more and say, okay, how was the study conducted? And you brought up a good point, actually. Who conducted the study? Mm-hmm. Who matters, as a matter of fact? Because if it's from a creditable scientist coming from a school, let's say Harvard, for instance, like they do a lot of studies and stuff, and they have a reputation for posting very good studies, and they replicate it very well, and they actually have relationships with other scientists who are replicating their studies and publishing it. Because, again, the only way it's going to get published, it has to pass the board. If it does not pass the board, it's not a great study. So the fact that it's on a board, and it's published, reviewed, it's a more legitimate statistic and study that we can go off of. But in this case, for a review, that one is going to be on my full autonomy. So I would have to make a decision right there. I can choose. I can look at the reviews and say, comments are pretty harsh. I don't know. But I might be in the mood one day. I'm feeling lucky. Let me play a little Russian roulette with myself, you know? This place is reviewed to be not so great, but I like burgers, and it has burgers. You know what? It's a trial and error now at this point. You know, it's not scientifically proven. It's just okay. Well, you can consider it like a little bit of a survey if you want to. Like, it's reviews, 5 stars, and it's going to depend on the strength. In that case, is going to depend on how many people actually leave reviews. Now, if there's one review that says this place sucks, I'm going to say, well, it's only one review, you know. But if there's like 1,000 something consistently saying the place is bad, it's going to sway me away from it more. It doesn't guarantee that I'm not going to go there. No, not really, but it sways me a little bit more. Like, if I see a bunch of other restaurants that say that they have better reviews, I'm going to say, I'm going to go to this restaurant instead, because the reviews are not as harsh, they're not as bad, and things like that. So that's where the differences kind of cave in. So knowing the differences and knowing how to approach it pragmatically and just being realistic about it too, we'll have the full autonomy and agency to kind of approach that.
So, I mean, then I forgot to add in, you also have people who don't look at reviews and they just look at the stars. Well, they got 4.5 out of 5 stars. Okay, let's go there.
Yeah.
When I'm in a rush to pick a restaurant, sometimes I look at that.
Yeah, we're not going to that right now.
But that happens. That happens. Like, you don't have to. There's no studies there. You just if you're in the mood, you're in the mood. That's kind of what it is there. So that's good. The excellent topics there. There is one thing. I'm gonna kind of switch it up a little bit here, unless you guys have anything you want to add to that.
No.
Okay.
I've distracted it enough. Like,
no. No, this is good. This is good because we're. You see, again, this is the purpose. Yeah. Now we were completely unaware of like how studies worked. Now we know a little bit more what gives it validity and what gives it reliability. Mm-hmm. Now we know STEM jobs and social working jobs, why it's dominant, and then the wage gapping and things like that. So this is what we're here for, okay? We're on a good roll here. And then we even talked a little bit about nomadic times. You see, like, there's a lot going on here. Mm-hmm. But now we can kind of shift gears a little bit, and I think we can try to get some studies going here. So that 45 one, we're probably not going to get to that. I wish. I really wanted to look at that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, can you sit back a little bit more face the camera? There you go. That's better. That's
Okay,
better.
gotcha. Yeah.
Okay, so what do you want? A study or something, or?
We can. Well, let me actually get to their topic first. I wanted to get a little bit of a topic here.
All right.
So we're moving on a little bit to now. This is something Chris and I we talked about a little bit in the past and such, and this is where I think we ended up getting into a nice little debate here. And we can always have these little debates here and
It's
there.
not the only fans coming, is it?
No, you set yourself up for this one, bro. You gonna get it today. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I'm just kidding. We're having fun here.
All right, OnlyFans, let's do it.
No, well, we're not gonna go with that one just yet. Let's have this one ready. It's on June 5th. Attractive women want it all.
Oh, I got notes on that, I think.
Oh, nice, wonderful. We'll talk about that in just a moment here. Now, here's one thing, and Chris probably didn't tell you this. I kind of wish he did, to be honest with you, but it's okay. So, Chris and I, we've already discussed this before, so he pretty much agrees with about 90-something% of what we talked about and such, right? Which is pretty good. And again, I do appreciate you really taking the time to watch the content and such, and indulging if you need to, and then kind of getting some insight on things like that, right? But of course, I welcome. What was that?
It was a little cute dog. What was that?
The study about a doggy. I don't remember downloading a study about a doggy.
Do you own that dog, or was that a white woman that had that?
It's just the background there.
That's what they have in the background for download speeds? Oh my goodness.
No, for Brave search.
Oh, okay, never mind. I should have a
You
download
gotta
speed.
be brave telling
But
a dog
this-
like that.
This is not good.
That's gonna open up soon, don't worry. Yeah, but by the time we're done, I guess maybe halfway that'll go through.
This should be instant. You know what I'm saying?
But is it possibly because you're streaming?
Nah, I don't know. I've been messing around with the internet a little bit. It could be that. It could be,
You know
it
what?
could be a
I forgot to
Discord
turn
by
off my
itself.
Wi-Fi.
It could be a Discord just messing up.
Don't tell him.
Because all this stuff is saved on Discord, actually.
Yeah, and we keep it on Discord just for everybody to look up
Yeah.
whenever they have the time, right? I do want people to, see what we look at and such. Anyway, this isn't the one. This isn't the one. This one?
Porn use and men and women's sexual
No, this
performance.
is something else.
That's something else, but we could talk about that, but maybe later on and such. But this one was extremely interesting to me and shocking, very shocking. But anyway,
I know we opened this one before, so I was like, let me see, maybe. All right.
we'll keep going here. We'll definitely keep on going and such. So anyway, I do apologize again for the download and such.
No worries.
So kind of moving in forward and such. So okay.
The attractive woman wants it all, right?
Yes, we can start with that one. There's another one, but we can start off with that one.
Alright.
So I think the first small debate Chris and I had and such, I'd like for you to be included on this one, right? It wasn't a serious debate. So it was like a little fun debate we had, and it was the topic on molding in a relationship. Okay? Now, I kind of want to start this topic up here with this, right? I want to ask you both this. Can you both define me, and I can ask you one time, ladies first, of course. I'd like for you to define to me what evolution means. In your best definition, what does evolution mean?
Can you go first?
So I'm trying to do ladies first here. It's okay. It's okay. We're having fun here, guys. No worries. Yeah. So Chris, in the best way possible, I'd like for you to define to me what evolution means.
Evolution means.
If you believe in that.
Yeah, I do believe in evolution.
Yeah.
So. Put me on the spot.
Well, she put you on the spot first.
Alright. Well, just literally evolvement. Like a animal or person overcoming certain obstacles and growing to be stronger, to be better, to have qualities that makes them a better person or better animal.
Okay. That's it? Or...
I'll stick with that.
Okay, sounds good. Your
Yeah,
turn.
I'm not going to do as formal of a definition. I feel like you should have spelled the word too. I feel like
Wow.
spelling bee.
Expectations.
But I would
right
say,
Go ahead.
I would say evolution would be, figuring out what has and has not worked in the past and
Okay.
kind of overcoming from it. Examples can be, for instance, like in how they used to do Pakistani weddings
Sure.
or marriages, how it used to be prearranged, and now they're kind of going away from that. So they've kind of evolutionized from, hey, maybe this isn't the best way to kind of create a household and a family.
Sure.
I I mean, there's tons of examples of it as well.
Yeah, we can think of a lot.
The phone, like the cell phone, has evolution.
Technological
yeah.
evolution.
I mean, like, I don't think it just has to be a person and an animal. I think it could be almost applicable to anything that we've adapted and changed from.
Sure. Absolutely. So, great definitions, guys. Evolution, honestly, we can give it the most purest form. In pure definition, if we keep it simple, if we look at David Buss's evolutionary psychology book, it's a big book, actually. Evolution, all it really means, in simple terms, not to say that you guys are wrong, I liked your definitions, they're pretty good. All it really means is change over time.
Yep.
That's all it is. Now, the reason why I bring this up, and this is kind of what we talked about, Chris and I, is the molding aspect, right? So, and if you want to kind of refresh on some of the things too, is the topic that him and I discussed about is, we talked about when it comes to people in relationships, we change in relationships. Now, how I brought it up was, when it comes to the molding aspect, and I brought this up, women are born with value in this world, whereas men have to build value in this world. And because of that, the interactions are different when it comes to certain changes, when it comes to female attraction to a man, men's attraction to women, right? So I didn't bring this up because we were playing cards and things like that, right? So minds are going everywhere. So here's what I guess going in with this debate, if we want to call it that, right? Now this part here is, when we're talking about evolution, as we defined it here, by our admission, all three of us has changed over time, right? If we look way back, even when we started going off the ancestry of primates, we constantly changed. We ended up getting Neanderthals. The first human life was back in Africa, and so we had we had Neanderthals, we had Homo erectuses, we had Homo sapiens. They all adapted very differently to their surroundings. The Neanderthals probably had a harder time, which explains the way their skulls were shaped. And they built many calluses with their hands and their feet because it's a response to their environment. There's something in evolutionary psychology called behaviorism theory and cognitive theory. Cognitive theory has disproven behaviorism because the cognitive theory basically means that people are going to adapt, behave, and act a certain way based on the environment they're placed in, no matter what. They have to, otherwise they die. Something happens to them where they get dismissed, they get ostracized from their groups. Something happens, not in their favor, if they choose not to evolve or just, go with the times. So what happens is that, just to kind of not bore you guys with this one, but with Neanderthals, they had to survive all very cold conditions. In order for them to walk on tough terrain, they had to build calluses on their feet. The calluses was an adaptive mechanism, a change, a mold to their surroundings. So if they didn't mold, or their body didn't have this propensity, this natural propensity to mold and evolve on the environments, they would have died off ages ago, well before their time. Then with Homo erectuses, same exact thing, Homo sapiens, and then them building, hunting. In order for the nomadic times to survive, we had to adapt and mold ourselves to certain times. Even if men didn't want to hunt, they had to.
Yeah.
They really had to. And for women, if the men weren't around because they're hunting, they're trying to bring back, the women have to protect their young. They can't just say, well, I'm not going to protect you. I'm going to do it. So I'm molding myself to be a nurturer. I'm molding myself to be a mother, and I'm molding myself to go with this, that theory I mentioned. It was the cognitive, the navigational part, not navigation, recognition, where I'm understanding how to gather. I'm understanding how to pick fruits, plants, and then bring them all together, and then I'm protecting my young from, basically, hopefully it's not like super hazardous things, because now the hunters are here protecting us, things like that. Yeah. So we had to mold in those aspects, pretty much whether we liked it or not. There was almost no choice at that time. But now we have more free will, we have more power, and because the environment doesn't challenge us that way anymore, right? Now coming back here into modern times, right, we go into relationships. Now, my debate was, the thing is, men mold outside of relationships, while women mold inside of relationships. Now, how am I going to emphasize that, you're probably wondering. Now, if we understand correctly, and we can disagree and agree, this is where we can kind of go back and forth on certain things, right? Okay. We've established, and we can actually pull, this is where this comes out now, okay? Chris, if you want to, well, actually, we can click on this. So this study right here, Attractive Women Want It All. The title's a little exaggerative. Okay, I'll admit that, okay? So this is a study by the same person who I just mentioned, David Buss. Okay, this is from he's from the Department of Psychology, University of Texas. Pretty old guy right now, but he's done multiple studies, multiple, and I'm still looking through some in his book. Now, if we can kind of come down where I have more of the highlights and such, it's a pretty big one. We're not going to go through all this. I always want to go to, okay, so we can start here. So participants, right? So we can kind of go off here. We have 214 individuals, and it's evened out.
Just 214.
Yeah, so we're not hitting the 300 mark. I understand that. So we're hitting the 300. But here's where we get to a little bit more of, okay, why do we have 214? What are they doing? What's their norm? What are the cohorts here, right? The cohorts is, it's evened out. It's split down the middle. 107 men, 107 women, right? It's split, right?
Good so far.
Now, they've been married less than 1 year at the time of testing. And the mean age of male sample was 25, almost 25 and a half. You want to round to the nearest 10th, 25 and a half, or decimal. And then the mean age for female was at 24, and they're basically 25 at that point, right? Couples were given $25, great.
I actually want to touch on that.
Yeah, sure.
People are being paid to do surveys.
Yeah, well, this is, in these type of studies, the incentive for them to even come on the studies, a lot of studies do that, actually. I participated in some studies. They gave me, like, free protein, or they gave me $100 or $200 just to give them incentive, because again, like, they're doing it because they want to see what the results would be. You know, you are going to get pushback with some people. I don't know if I want to do this study. We can tell them what it is, but if I give them a little bit of money, and again, it's for the good of whatever it is after that. You know what I mean? We're not trying to put bad light on people. We're trying to see, okay, is this true or not? You know what I mean? Yeah. So there are people who want incentives, so that's what they do. You know, it's what it is.
I used to get paid for surveys too. Like, there's a whole program in South Florida where you can go. Like, I tried the whose chicken sandwich was it?
Chicken sandwich.
Popeye's chicken sandwich.
Oh, you were paid to try the chicken sandwich?
Yeah.
Such a great sandwich.
Whoa,
good sandwich. I love it.
They gave us 2 sandwiches and kind of told us, like, hey, what do you like about each one? What don't you like about each one? And, like, the difference was the sauce. So,
the sauce. A nuance. The sauce, just like...
Yeah. I mean, I got paid for that. I also got paid for, like, feminine products. And using and trying them out. Yeah. Also, in the malls. Like, we were approached in the mall in Coral Springs recently about, like, hey, do you guys want to do a survey? We got surveys for your demographic available. Like, I feel like it's a lot more... Like, I've never really known of any surveys that haven't been paid.
Yeah.
So that also,
it's a norm.
That also brings me to, if somebody is in a successful marriage, if they're doing great, they have a great wife, they're making good money, why would you get $25 for a survey? You don't need it.
But I disagree with you.
Yes, but...
First of all.
Oh, okay.
So that $25 was like, you know...
it wasn't that much.
It's a little further back then, you know what I'm saying?
But I think
like,
there's a certain demographic that takes surveys.
Over here.
I don't think
That's a tank of gas.
represents But anyways, continue.
Yeah, and look, I get your points, Chris, and stuff like that. But really, kind of when we look at these studies, let's look at kind of like the what is. You know what I mean? That's more of what it is right now.
Right.
We understand that not all studies are going to be like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But as we talked about the guy David Buss, and he's very well known. He has a high reputation when it comes to making studies and surveys and things like that.
Okay.
So knowing that we have the reputation and such, and that we have to look a little bit more of like the procedures and such. So highlighted more, participants engaged in 3 separate episodes of assessment as part of a large set of studies. Right. So he also has other batteries of studies that kind of conjunct with this one, right? And if we kind of go down a little bit more, I'm waiting for the graphs actually. This is somewhere. There it is. Okay, very good, very good. This is my favorite one. So yeah, okay. So there's a lot going on here. There's kind of a lot going on here, but
good gene indicators, really?
Oh wait, I got don't go ahead.
Yes, excellent,
Okay.
perfect.
Right.
So now understanding this, what is the limitation with this? Every study has a limitation, first of all. Okay,
Yep.
That I'm not going to be somebody who's like, this is the perfect study. It's not. There are other studies that kind of follow up with it, and they have consistent results. So we're only choosing one for now because this is what we have for now. There is another study, but it's not by David Buss. It's probably from somebody else, but it's probably something like this. So kind of going off this, we got to understand. Remember, we're going off people who have been married for less than a year, and they're in 25s, like 25 years old, right?
Yeah.
And if we're kind of going off female hypergamy, okay, are we familiar with that? Female hypergamy?
Yeah.
Okay. So would you like to define to me what female hypergamy is?
I saw that.
It's okay. We're having fun here. It's okay.
I'll be
In your
honest,
best.
I don't know what it means. I'll be honest.
And it's okay. It's totally fine. It's because I want everybody to be on the same page here. That's all. All right. So, in your best words, of course, what do you feel or think possibly? What could that mean as to what this means?
I don't like definitions.
You know, I got it. So basically, it's a term I want to say that's been created kind of by the reptile community or the mammal, so maybe even way before that, right? And female hypergamy, all that really is, if we're going to go down simple terms like how we define evolution, it's women want their best option. They want the best. And women by nature are solipsistic, so they want to be sure that they get the best. And this is why I said that it's okay for women to be selective, because it's a security measure for them. How foolish would Chris and I, both Chris's and myself, look if I argued with you, why do you want a man who can protect you? Why do you want a man who can give you security? Why do you want a man who is tall, handsome, this and that? Why?
Chris isn't that very tall.
Wow.
But he's taller than you!
Yes.
Okay, Miss
Sorry.
5'2".
5'1". Get it right.
Oh, 5'1".
Oh yeah, you're the man here. You're supposed to know that. So, but my point is, like, we would sound pretty ridiculous if we argued about what your desires are, right? Because, and I've even said this in my previous podcast, desire is non-negotiable. There's no way. I would look foolish if I argued with you about your desires, because you have every right to want, need, and desire certain traits from a man in order to set your future for motherhood.
I agree. I think desires are more valuable than opinions.
Yeah, it's whatever they want at that point, you know what I mean? And then again, like when it comes to nomadic times, like it was the same exact thing. If a woman chose poorly, that's danger or even ostracization or death, certain death for her and her offspring, because now no one protects her. She's out in the wild. She can't hold on to the baby and try to fight a bear at the same time. Like, it's not going to happen that way. There's too much risk. Women have a lot of risk mitigation when it comes to saying they have the right to have risk mitigation, because if for some reason, just hypothetically, let's say Chris, for some reason, and this is just hypothetical, of course, if he for some reason loses his job, quits his job, whatever, decides to not want to work, decides to not want to protect you, decides to not be your leader, not be the one who's going to give you everything that you need in the relationship, that changes the dynamics heavily in the relationship, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's almost to the point where it's like, I don't know if this is going to be for me, you know what I mean? So and that's fair to say, right? Because at the end of the day, you have to be this way, because if you have a child, you want to have the nuclear familyism. Because if you don't have that, again, the single motherhood, which I wish we were able to pull that stuff, you know, it's a little detrimental. It's very, not even little, it's very detrimental. You wouldn't want that. I always say, like, a woman's metric of success is her ability to be a mother, have a family, be nurturing, be able to protect her family and then, you know, bring the household together and be complementary. That was the word I was looking for. The C word, remember that? Yeah. Complementary towards the man's mission. If she fails to do that, a lot of men won't find that very attractive. But kind of going with this here, right? Do you have anything to add to that, by the way?
Yeah. So.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Before we go on to this.
But what if a woman can't provide a child?
What if a woman can't provide for a child?
So then what's her next, like, mission?
Here's the thing. Because here's what happens most of the time with the epidemiology, right? What happens is if she can't do it, they end up going for jobs most of the time and then daycare. That's what mostly happens, which I don't think is great, but because it becomes down to the single familyhood, the single motherhood household, there's really no other alternative unless she finds somebody else.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. I think she meant if she cannot have a child.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, I misunderstood that. My fault. Okay. So if you cannot provide a child,
you adopt.
I was gonna say that second, but now here's where certain dynamics change. That's gonna depend also on the man, because yes, he's gonna give you, if he understands women, which I'm sure he does. If a man, let's not even use Chris. If a man in general understands in general what women want, like I mentioned, things like that, right? And you're getting everything that you want and need, like you have the alpha traits and the beta traits, meaning that you have his masculinity, you think he's arousing, you think he's attractive, and then you have the beta side where he's a provider, he's giving you security, he's giving you that assurance that he's not going to go off and find some strange, you know what I mean? Then there's a very high likelihood, and this is what you and I talked about, it is improbable that you as the woman, because you pretty much attained your hypergamy, it's dubiously, this is the word I wanted to use here, it's not probable, let's just say it that way. It's dubiously improbable, because you're not going to leave that, because you have protection, you have security, you're being given what you want. Unless the guy treats you bad and he's abusing you or things like that, that's a different story. But if he's giving you, there's a very high likelihood you're not going to leave the relationship because he's giving you everything and you're happy with him. There's very high unlikelihood.
So I want to cut in. Highly unlikely for her to leave, but if we go back to this term of evolution of men wanting to have offspring, do you think
I was getting to that.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
I was getting to that. Yeah, but thank you for circling back on that one. Yes, I was getting to that. So now, kind of what I was saying, now it depends on the man, because if he's giving you what you want,
But you're not giving what he wants.
then that's going to ultimately depend now on his decision, right? Because the same goes for you. Let's say, for instance, you want kids, but for some reason his sperm and things like that, he can't be fertile along that. Mm-hmm. So that is going to be a concern for you. Now, is that a guarantee you're going to leave him? I can't. That's not for me to decide. That's not for me to decide. That's for you to decide. So a conversation I can imagine will come across and say, well, I understand this and that. Now this is where Crystal's coming in. If biological children to pass on a lineage isn't an option, then that's a decision that both of you will have to make and say, well, we can go for adoptions. We can go for, in your case, because if you can't produce the sperm for her, things like that, the sperm isn't good, there is an alternative for insemination and things like that. And
On the record, my sperm is fine.
Great! He's good, guys. He's good. Healthy. He still produces millions per month, I think, or an hour. I forgot that one. There's a lot. I think it's per hour, actually.
Just on the record, all right.
Yeah, per hour. Yeah. So yes. Will that opportunity come in here and there for some cases? Yes, absolutely. But it is incumbent for the man and for the woman to sit down and say, look, like, I do like this relationship. I do like where this is going. It would be a shame if I don't have a child or children with you, but what do you think about adoption? Now the ball's back in your court.
So I'll also go back to like evolution, where you were talking about the very early times where women didn't really have a choice. You had kids. That was your choice. You were a homemaker, you know. So in the period of time that women can make that decision that they don't want kids, or men can make that decision where they don't want kids. So I second that with, then what's her position? Is she still supposed to be the nurturer and the provider? And if she doesn't have kids, then what fills the empty spot?
So, see, that's going to be one of those rare scenarios, right? Well, it's not too rare, actually, nowadays especially. So, in that case, if I were to give you a case like that, where we're making it to the point where she doesn't want kids, or let's say she can't. Let's just say she can't, right? And the man still wants you to, of course, be complimentary towards his life, support his mission, be in his frame, you're submissive to him, you see him as the higher of the leader, things like that, and you continue doing that, that's what he wants. Idealistically, that's what a lot of men would want. So once you step out of that, that's when difficulties will start coming in. Because now he's going to say, well, we've already talked about not having kids. I do want kids. I've already said, okay, well, the kids are out of the question. But the fact that, you know, we're so good together and we're like almost perfect at this point, and you're helping me with my mission, that we have a beautiful home together. I'm giving you the best life. You don't even have to work. All you have to do at this point is make sure that we're taking care of like the home, and even you can work too. What I advise too, and this is I think where some of the mistakes come in, is even if it's not a kid, if you don't have a kid, and then you decide to go off into like a career in which you can't really opt out of, like also engineering or anything like that you choose to, or like a very high position, something around there, there's a trade-off that goes off with that. There's definitely a trade-off. So in one of my podcasts, actually, it was with Julie, I don't know if you saw that one, she asked me this one question. She says, okay, so what if this one woman, she's rich, and she can give you a gym, and she has all the degrees, she's extremely intelligent, she has a really good job, she's like a higher up and things like that, And she said that you don't have to do anything. You could be just living in the house doing absolutely nothing. And to me, I'm just like, okay, I see where this is going, right? And I said, okay. So I said, okay, it sounds good on paper, but no. I immediately said no. And I said why. Here's why. Because in most cases, not all, but in most cases now, there's a process that kind of goes into that. And we talked about this already, and by your admission, we pretty much agreed to this. When men go into hard labor, they become business owners. They start going into more entrepreneurships, and they start dealing with very hard people. They can't stay nice and stay super duper agreeable, because a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners are going to step all over them. Yeah. I know this because I do real estate, and there are a lot of people who... if they have an advantage, if they feel like they can talk to you a certain way and walk all over you, believe me, they will. They definitely will. So what happens is the person, when they go into such serious career fields, they start building Machiavellianism. And what that means is that they start becoming more disagreeable. They start having more type A and type B personalities. It's my way or the highway. I'm the boss. I make the final decision. I make the final say. They'll still listen to like partners and things like that, but ultimately they're going to have the final say because they're kind of the head. And if we're looking more in like a religious aspect, like Christianity, I don't really follow religion too much. I'm reading the Bible and trying to learn it a little bit. But just kind of going off that, if we even follow like church methods, we have God, Jesus Christ, men, and women. Women being the body of the church, men being the head, somewhere around there, right? And then after that is Jesus Christ and then God. And what makes Christian women, at least if we're just talking about that population, why a lot of men, even if they're not secularists or they're also Christian, is what makes them valuable is because they understand hierarchies. That's what makes them very valuable, because they understand that hierarchies are a thing, their purity is a big thing. They understand that the man is the head of the household, things like that. And that's why even before the industrialization, the Industrial Revolution, we had a lot of great marriages. Did it have problems too? Yeah, it did. Like there was still some cases of domestic violence. There were still some things around there. Yes, I understand that. It wasn't perfect either. It definitely was. But our nuclear family rate and birth rates were higher at that time. So that's where we kind of go off on that axiom, right? And going back to this, if we were to do that now with a woman, if she starts going through all these, men in general, and you can disagree with me on this or not, but men in general, and we can even ask the chat and such, I like to always involve the chat. In general, we don't want bossy women. We don't want that. We don't want a woman who's gonna emasculate us. We don't want a woman who's gonna constantly boss us around or make decisions over us and try to act like they're the leaders, believe that there's a 50-50, the equalism, that we're the same, things like that. We idealistically don't want that. So what the trend you see now is, if you have women who are working, which is totally fine, it's totally fine. What you're going to hear the trend is, when they're working, they're going to tell you and say, well, I want to focus on my career, I want to focus on my education, things like that. Okay, cool. But if I'm going on a date with a girl, this is just me now, I'm using empiricals. If I'm going on a date with a woman and then she tells me, well, it's cool, yeah, like, I do want to settle down one day, and then I might wonder, what is that one day? You know what I mean? Because, your fertility matters to me, you know what I mean? Like, part of what makes women valuable is their fertility, and their youth, and their beauty. That's pretty much what it'll boil down to, and we're going to go over more of the values and such. But if she tells me, well, I want to focus on my career, and I want to wait until I'm 35 to have kids, what do you think the guy's going to say?
Next.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on how old he is, too.
Yeah, because the thing is, we have another study also where men in general prefer younger women, preferably. And then there's Chris, maybe both Chris's, you guys might have heard, there's a football coach, I forget, I think he's...
Bill Belichick in the 20-something...
Yeah, he's like 70-something years old.
He's 70s dating a 20-year-old cheerleader,
He jumped on that pretty quickly. Like, you didn't even let him finish.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
No,
that one was crazy.
No,
I'm concerned that you know this so quickly.
I'm just a big NFL fan. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a kind of a thing, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Now, that's just one example. So I'm not going to say that's the end of, I proved you wrong. No, that's not what it is. It's an empirical. It's an anecdote. Does a 74-year-old always date a cheerleader, 24-year-old? No, not always. But that's the only reason I'm bringing that up, is because there's a study where it's a relatively old one. We can pull that up if anything. It's men prefer women who are younger by at least 3.5 years of age from them, and women prefer men of the same, like either same age or 3.5 years older than them. the woman, something around there.
For different reasons. I would assume the man wants something older or younger for fertility reasons and having kids and running around the kids, as well as like the man wants or the woman wants somebody equal to her age, because a lot of women feel like older men are mature. More maturity comes with older in age or closer to age, versus like I remember as a kid like always hearing you always want to date somebody older because they're more mature, and guys that are younger are immature. I mean, I don't know how factual that is, especially in today's time. I feel like it's based on your upbringing more. But like that's the thing. A lot of women do believe that.
Mm-hmm. Here's my thing on that. And I think this is going to complement what you're saying too, because like Chris was saying, there's a lot of misinformation, and we're just kind of going off stigmas. Here's what we're going to show in about 5 seconds here. So, idealistically, the reason why women, and this, I'm going to go off just my thoughts first before we get onto something else, right? I'm always going to disclose that first.
Yes.
In my personal thoughts, okay, or opinion, is women tend to go for older men because they've had more time to mold and establish themselves, right? But if they go for like a younger guy, which is okay, he might still be in college, he might work like at a Target or something like that, but he just happens to be a nice guy. And the girl gives him a shot. That happens, right? Mm-hmm. But ultimately, what ends up happening is that men's commodity is that they have to sell potential of a good future for women. Women's commodity first is her purity. If she cannot sell purity, she has to go off other things. Like, okay, virginity's out the door. So how can I keep going? Or have you seen the studies on the show where if the more partners they've been with, the lower their ability to stay happy drops? Have you seen that study on our podcast?
No. But I did see the testosterone.
Oh, that's the testosterone one. Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
That's interesting.
So, but basically what that is for sure is that because, well, I'm so sorry, I was going off a tangent there. What was I just saying right now about the study? Chris, can you tell me? I know, I was thinking about 10,000 different things.
I'm not in your brain.
No, it's okay. Yeah, so I was mentioning the ages. So because of, yes, so for men, if they cannot sell, women now, if women cannot sell purity, it's like, okay, I need to be able to understand men. And I'm going to go off a whim here. Personally, just my experience, again, empirically, I don't really believe most women, not all, there are going to be, even the younger ones, of course, and we talked about this, they don't take the time to understand men, simply because it's like, why should they? Because men are just going to come up to them anyway. It's like they have more opportunities to go on dates, and women, even data-wise, they'll go on more dates. It's because, okay, Cupid studies, like it'll show, like, wow, like look how many hit-ups they'll get, look how many messages they get versus a guy. And we don't have this one study, actually. I tried to find it. I couldn't, for the love of God. But there's a study, from what I heard, it was a small one, nothing too crazy, where they tested a male celebrity with a woman who was kind of out of shape, apparently. And she ended up getting equivalent pull from men than the celebrity was with women. Isn't that kind of insane? Now, again, I wish I had the study, but you could probably see it on podcasts, like they bring it up and things like that. But to me, it's like, that is no way, man. So women, their sexuality, their youth, their beauty, just women in general, like, they're very privileged to have this. And that's not a bad thing. That's totally not bad. It's power. It's a power I think women do deserve to have because they're beautiful. And this goes on to like the tattoos thing. I had something about tattoos and stuff like that. I just don't think women should do it. Because like when I look at a woman, I'm like, wow, look how beautiful they look. You know what I mean? Look at them carrying our future. And then when I see tattoos, it's like you're putting graffiti on a house. That's me. That's personally me. But that's like a whole thing I talked about in one of my episodes. You can always refurbish back onto that one. I go into like a whole thing about like masculinity and femininity and how it looks to the man's eyes and things like that versus how it looks to a woman's eyes. Do you have anything you want to add on to any of that, or?
So, does that mean men are unattractive or feminine for getting floral tattoos, or like the opposite?
Well, in general, what I would say, and this is kind of going off. Oh, we're wrapping it up already. Oh my goodness. No. Okay, so because we gotta just kind of, okay, I want to go over this one study, if anything, and let's go over maybe one more little debate here if we can, maybe for like another 15 minutes. So kind of wrapping this part up. So with the tattoos, see, the thing is, in general, we're talking about generalities, right? If we talk about like that 0.1% or 2%, we can talk about it, but like how big of an impact is that going to really be? You know what I mean? In general, which to me in general is 50% and above. That's what it'll be. And even statistics and science will kind of say that because there's p-values, right? So what it is, in general, women find men with tattoos more masculine than men finding women with tattoos masculine. They find them, it's a more of a masculine trait. And when men in general, not all, men in general, when they see certain women with like specific tattoos, men get tattoos for different reasons than women, and I explained this in my video. Usually, whenever women get tattoos, it kind of shows that they have a bit of a past. There's damage. There's problems, potentially. So, and there's even some empirical data as well, where you'll even hear some tattoo artists, or even doctors or psychiatrists will say stuff like, well, the ones who and I have friends who are in this, so this is more empirical, but I'll tell you, I don't have science on this. I don't. I'm going off pure empiricals. I'm going off by what I've talked to with some other people, not even in my circle, but even online, and like friends and family, things like that. And in general, to my findings, they'll say, yeah, it just doesn't look good on them. It shows me that she has a bit of baggage. That they've been through certain things. And when you talk to psychiatrists and doctors, even the psychiatrists will first say, well, when they have problems with like family or they've been through like very traumatic past, they usually have an abundance of tattoos on them versus the ones that don't have tattoos, or maybe one, not so many problems. And then when you go to like hospitals and things like that, even some reports from, I know this one doctor, he was talking to me about some reports. Yeah, man, like some of them who come on in here and they've been like abused or in a car accident or they were on drugs and they overdose or something, they have tattoos. So it's like, again, it's empirical. It's not, I don't have science on this. I don't. I'm going off my own generalization on what I've seen, what I've heard, and things like that's the best I can do when it comes to that. So I don't know if that answers your question in particular, but the flower tattoos, that's going to ultimately depend on the woman. Like if she sees like a flower tattoo on a guy, it's like, oh, some of them might be like, a flower tattoo, what's that? Some of them might be, oh, you like roses, you like petals. And then the guy might have like a history with that. Like, oh yeah, I like this is my favorite flower and things like that. So the fact that he's very abundantly open about it is something, right?
Or like it could be his grandmother's birth flower or something.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it does depend. It depends on the kind of tattoo. It depends on the age of the woman. Like, and going back to your other point about purity, and if I see somebody the age 25 and I've known they have not had sex, I'll be like, what is wrong with you? What happened?
This is to a woman or a man?
To the woman.
Okay.
So me personally, I'm like, you haven't had sex by the age of 25. What is wrong with you? But I think that's also evolution. Like, we've grown to the point where we don't think as sex as this purital, man gets with woman for the first time and we have like, this spiritual bond. Sex is not what it was 30, 40, 50 years ago. It's almost like a transaction. Yeah. But it's a beautiful transaction.
Of course.
But it's, I guess, to the point where would you want somebody that's your age, let's say 35, that has not had sex at all? Or would you want somebody that has been through a relationship, that has been through, the ups and downs, has made themselves better, has grown as a person, but they have probably slept with people 2, 3, 4 times?
See, that's where I have to go off statistics and I have to vet the person, right? Because she can tell me what you're saying. I can't take that at face value. I have to investigate. I have to vet this person to see what she tells me is true. Yeah. What you're saying to me as a question is extremely variable. I would like to answer it in a straightforward way, but let me see if I can answer it right now with what you're giving me.
All right. I just want to say that's my point. I think a lot of this is very variable. There's a lot of aspects to consider, not just for tattoos, but at the age of a person losing their virginity. I think it really depends on that person, what they've been through.
Right. But do you think, because you're saying that you think there might be something wrong with a woman who is still a virgin at age of 24 or 25. Yeah. So, okay, do you think that's men who tell her that, or do you think women tell her that?
I think both, maybe.
I think women tell each other that more, to be very honest with you. Because women try to shame each other and try to decrease their values because they themselves don't have value that they've been able to retain. That's what I would say. Like, I've seen this empirically, and the fact that you just see the behaviors. Like, the moment, here's the thing. I'm going to kind of go off this really quick because I do want to show the study. I know we're kind of wrapping up here.
No, we're not showing no studies right now.
Ah, goodness gracious. All right, that's fine.
We'll come back for another podcast.
Yeah, we'll come for like episode 2 or something like that.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll kind of almost wrap up here and things like that here without showing the studies here. And I know you had some notes here. Definitely save them. Definitely save them.
Yeah. We didn't touch on any of them. We got this.
Yeah, and then we were about to touch on one of them. We were about to, but then we had other good conversations. So let's see if we can go for like next week on Tuesday or Thursday, and we can have like a part 2 or something like that, right? Yeah, but kind of almost wrapping up here. So let me see here. So yeah, I'm gonna say mostly it's women, because if you look at just how people are, right? Like I'm gonna give you this example. This is a saying I create. I'm proud of this one actually. Men welcome competition, women eliminate competition. So you're probably wondering, well, how's that going, right? Now, here's what I mean by men welcome competition. When you remember that example I showed you on how we're kind of disagreeing on each other, right? Excuse me. Men by nature, in order for us to improve in society, we compete against each other. We compete against each other by trying to pretty much outbid each other, outgrow each other, outperform, whatever it takes. And no matter what happens, if he wins, I'm still going to kind of get something out of it, experience and more knowledge. Okay, so what he did was pretty good. And then same vice versa. If I win something, he's going to be like, wow, you know what? That was a bit of an error on my end. But what he did was kind of flawless. I need to probably study this a little bit more. And we're more enticed and we have an incentive to kind of grow from that point, right? Now, when it comes, and this is in the dating market, kind of like that. However, the other way around, it's not the same when it comes to women, unfortunately. So let's say we're at like a party, right? I make this little example here, like a club or a little bit of a club, let's just hypothetically. And we're talking about that 24, 25-year-old, and that's when men find ideal peaking for women, right? So we're doing that, and then she's a 24, she's very beautiful 24, 25-year-old, and she goes with like other friends maybe, and she's there, and then she happens to meet up with like some other women who are probably older than her, like in their 30s, and let's just assume they're single, right? So they've had time to get a guy, and they probably failed to lock down a guy, right? So here's what women do. This is how they compete against each other. So what they do is that, let's say we have one group here of the older women, and then we have another group here of like the younger women, right? And then they're going and they're doing their thing, you know, they're trying to have some fun. And then there's a bunch of guys who come on in, and to them they're arousing, they're very attractive. So you got this group here and this group here, the younger or the older, and the guys come on in here, they're not looking, for the most part, they're not really looking over here. But you might see a few of them who've had augmentations, right? Breast implants and BBLs, things like that, facials.
Or like cougars.
All right. But for the most part, because we understand, and we're going to go with another episode on this one, what men want chastity, purity, well, they're the same actually, a woman who's submissive, a woman who's compliant, a woman who's going to complement the man's mission, her ability to keep and respect the man. When it comes to intimacy, like she's like the best, a freak with him and everything, and nobody else, of course, and she's not promiscuous. Those are the things idealistically men would want in most cases. And in fact, I will say biologically speaking, that's what they would want. So if we're going here, and they see the youth, they see the beauty and things like that, they're going to go there. Now the older women, how they compete for the most part, if they're like that, and they're trying to go for the same guys, because idealistically women compete for almost the same guys sometimes, because if we look at ancestry, we have more female ancestors than we do male ancestors. Why is that? Because in the past, women shared men. They shared high-value men. That's why women are outperforming in the ancestry, right? So procreation. And then what it goes down to there is the older women, they'll come up to the younger women when they're kind of separated from the guys, and they'll say, oh, how you guys doing? Try to befriend them. And in cases like that, they'll say, oh, you know those guys over there? They're like in their 30s, but they've had time to grow, they've had time to mature, and they've had time to build themselves. So women like that find them very attractive, right? Because they can provide and give security and potential. They have potential. So what the older women are most likely going to do in scenarios like that, if they're like that and they're trying to go for the same guy, but they see the men are going after the younger ones, they're going to say, you know, it's creepy that those guys who are somewhat older than you are going after you. That's the P word. I don't know if I can say that, but it's PEDO. Yeah. So that's creepy. You shouldn't allow them. And then when the guys come on back, if they've been instilled and indoctrinated with that ideology, now they're going to go to the guy and say, no, sir, you're too old for me, this and that. Get away from me, you creep. And now the group is going to be like, well, but we're here. You can take us anytime. So they've just eliminated competition when those girls, rightfully, they were the ones that the guys wanted. So because of that, and if the guys have, if they're just trying to go for something, whatever, women just kind of cheated their way through getting a man that they wasn't really meant for them to begin with, to start off with. But most of those women end up being in like the recreational usage for the most part. Not always, but for the most part. Do you guys have anything you want to add to that?
You guys have any final thoughts? of the show.
He's like, wrap it up.
Yeah, we didn't get to everything we wanted, but that's okay.
I don't know. My only final thought is, I don't think, maybe it's just me, maybe it's just my friend group, I don't believe that we treasure purity as much as we used to anymore.
Okay.
And I feel like the older you get, you kind of want to see some experience. You don't want to see a person who's never had sex and wonder, is she good in bed?
Or doesn't
Does
know
she
what she
to
wants.
do? Yeah, does she know what she wants?
Or how to do it.
Yeah, I would argue men don't care about that, to be honest with you. Because the thing is, again, because if purity means they haven't had sex, so that shouldn't matter. Because the thing is that men are going to be the ones performing for the most part, so the woman is going to start adapting to certain things like positions, this and that. What does she like? What does the guy like? Now, obviously, when it comes to the intimacy and such like that, we got to think about like the recreational usage and the I'm going to be taken seriously category.
Yeah.
Now, of course, like if men are serious about their vetting process, they're going to want paternity. They're going to want chastity. They're going to want purity, because if they understand, especially what the science will show next time, that when women go through a higher body count, their ability to stay happy in relationship declines, even in marriages, if they understand that their mate selecting strategies start to narrow in a little bit more and they're more careful, because they understand that if they choose wrong, also what happens is that they're providing for the wrong person. What if the woman has like an agenda and then she just happens to leave him, especially with marital laws not being very favorable towards men? She leaves and then she gets the assets, half of the money, alimony, things like that. Like, men have to be very careful with that. Now, that's not always like that in the cases, right?
Yeah.
But that's what it'll be. So I would argue that men really don't care about that, because at the end of the day, if men are going around and just having sex and things like that, I guarantee you, they're not caring about a woman's experience. If one is good, great. Another one is not so great, but then they do it a few more times and they mold to that point. At that point, it doesn't matter, because men want variety. It's more about the variety that men will want versus, okay, well, this and that, because at the end of the day, men are the ones performing most of the time. That's what I would say.
Yeah, but it's not. Oh,
Fine, his last thought here. Go ahead.
all right. But as a man,
Yeah.
evolving evolution, you want somebody who can be a mate, who can provide for a child. How do you know if somebody even wants to do that if they've never done it before?
But having sex doesn't determine that. If she wants to have a baby or not.
What if she has sex one time and hates it? Wouldn't you want somebody who's done it before, who has experience and knows what she wants and she wants a kid?
That's pretty improbable, I would say. The thing is that what a lot of women tend to do most of the time, it's who they had intimacy with. So I wouldn't really say it was bad. It's who performed it. At the end of the day, if the sex was bad, it's the performer who's going to give her the bad time. But if someone else comes in and gives her a better time, I don't think the woman will discriminate that way. I don't think so. I think it's also bad faith, but also just, can you imagine, like, let's think of it this way. If a woman, like, it just has sex one time only with that one person, don't you think it's a little ridiculous if she goes around saying, oh, sex is terrible, she's only done it just one time, only one time? People are going to look at her like she's a little crazy, like, but you only did it one time. Like, and the guy was probably not very good. Like, describe yourself a little bit more, like, what happened. Because it goes back with the science and such. Just because we produced one study and it was published, peer-reviewed, that's not the end-all, be-all. When it was replicated, most of the times it gives it more credibility. So when she finally finds the guy, she won't think that way. That's the abbreviation I like to use, that the guy. When she finds the guy, and so that she's going to be like, wow, like, this is really, really good for the most part. Because at the same time, she's going to be more submissive towards that. She'll enjoy it more because it's the guy. Like, if she's with somebody, no matter what, and he is the guy and provides everything, and she's just aroused by him, the sex is going to be good. Again, it's going to be good. They will find ways to make it good. They'll try new things. Masculine men who have it more together and have more experience, there's a very high unlikelihood that something like that will happen. It's rare. Can it happen? Yeah. Erectile dysfunction.
I guess I'll end it with, I do disagree. I think men around the age of 30 do want somebody more experienced, that they know what they have and know. I just disagree, but it's fine.
That's fine. Yeah. We'll go into part 2. We'll go into a little bit more of the studies, and I know you wanted to go into some studies too. So save everything. Definitely save everything. We'll have we'll download some of those stuff also. So we didn't think it was going to take like that long and such, but we do apologize for that. And so pretty much this is pretty much it. I do appreciate you guys really coming on here. Super duper fun conversations. Fun conversations, and we appreciate you guys logging in here and such. This is Leo, Chris, Aisha, and Chris signing out.
All right.